If you're a QuickBooks customer looking to grow without the growing pains, you need the Intuit ERP, the AI native ERP that upgrades right from QuickBooks. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
Hello. We are all domestic terrorists.
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are all domestic terrorists.
And I got myself a tasty coffee with that flavored cream in it.
Yeah.
Goes good.
All different flavors.
Dude, I feel like the skinnier you get, the better you get at debates. And you've owned me too hard. Let's just get it out of the... Let's just start off by saying, this is the last episode of Leftovers.
Yeah, after our last episode, in the heated debate that we had, I realized that I was a class traitor, and that...
I don't know why people said that, because, that's a good thing in your situation, to be a class...
I don't think they meant it like that.
Yeah. That doesn't make any sense.
I like what you're saying, though.
You'd be like Engels, you know what I mean? Like the guy who co-authored it and was facilitating it, but also had a factory. You know what I mean? So that's not a bad thing. Engels was a class traitor.
That's right. That's me. I'm Engels.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But there was crazy fallout from our last episode, which is kind of nuts because ignoring all that, though, it seemed like a lot of people did like the conversation. I myself am pretty ignorant on the methods of governing and histories and all that. So I do think this conversation of, I'm not even going to say capitalism because that seems to trigger people. I'm just going to say social democracy. Because when people hear me say capitalism, they shit their fucking britches.
Yeah, because there's a lot of, well, first of all, we're online. So no matter what you say, people are going to be very passionate about it. One of the things that I do quite frequently is yell at people to be normal because people just have no fucking way of being normal online. So there's that problem. And then the other side of it is there's a lot of, baby socialists out there who are on their own journey. Okay. And they get really passionate. And the goal always is oh my God, we have to convert every single person to socialism immediately.
Or anyone to the right of me is part of the problem.
There's that too. But of course, it takes a while. It takes a while to engage in any kind of movement building. And it's something I stress quite a bit.
It's hard to tell how much of it was... Anyway, regardless, I was actually invigorated by the conversation in that, I don't know what I'm talking about. And so I've been thinking about our conversation a lot, and I've been educating myself a lot, and I want to continue the conversation today, but I don't want to have a debate. I want to have I want to go on a fact-finding journey for myself about how socialism is addressing certain issues versus social democracy.
Okay. And
to understand from you, a socialist, what really that is and how would it be, enacted. Yeah. Dan, are you a socialist, would you say?
I'd broadly I'd say so, sure.
Dude, we're about to get executed after this. Ethan's called...
Dude, everybody was riding for you guys.
This is Ethan's McCarthy trials. It's would you say you're a card-carrying communist? Okay, very good.
No, being a socialist is cool, apparently, online.
No, dude. It's
sick.
There are...
He's right.
It's
super cool.
It is.
For as many very
cool.
Well, of course, there's a lot of...
You're for the people,
here.
bro.
There's a lot of people here that would be... there are very few places online where you can just be out and about and openly defend any kind of economic organization, society beyond capitalism without a tremendous amount of scrutiny.
Well, I got roasted in our
capitalist
community.
dogma. Well, of course, the other side was defending you. That's why you didn't notice it. You know
See,
what I
that's
mean?
not good though. I don't want Tim Pool defending me or whoever. I didn't watch all. I didn't watch all the.
No, I don't think Tim Pool did anything.
Absolutely.
But one of his commanders, the guy who's like always the really weird like failed musician guy.
That I think
was,
describes all of them.
Yeah, that's true.
But I want to better represent my position because I don't really know a lot, and I feel like I've done a lot of research in the week following.
Let the conversation
So,
begin.
What did you do? What did you read? What kind of research did you
I
do?
had a very in-depth conversation with ChatGPT.
Respect. Okay, that's good.
I asked it really kind of.
Well, Ben Shapiro thinks it's socialist, like ChatGPT socialist. So
Right.
like ChatGPT probably
ChatGPT
Lenin.
is so
Right,
real.
yeah.
yeah.
ChatGPT keeps it so real. You don't even
Yeah,
know.
ChatGPT Lenin pilled you.
So,
Yeah.
is Lenin a socialist or a social democrat?
No, that's Lenin is the revolutionary figure that is probably more important than Marx even.
What's his deal? He's just a socialist.
Yes, he's
All right.
the first. Like, I mean, we're the father of the USSR.
That was a nice legacy to have.
Could have been.
I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
Could have been. No.
No.
You're no. There's nothing. I don't think it's that controversial to say that. Like,
Yeah, I mean USSR, or well, Joseph Stalin was basically
Right.
whatever. That's not what I want to get into right now.
Stalin definitely had a lot of issues. I will admit.
First, I want to say that I promote my shit all the time on the show, so now I want to give Hasan a shout out.
Can't. There's no reason to promote it. It's already all sold out.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Good for you.
New ideology drop, immediately sold out. Kind of annoying that it sold out so quick, but I'm sorry, except for the hoodie that I'm wearing currently. That's it.
Which one is that?
This
one?
Haas anger management one. Yeah.
Get the president on the phone quick.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to hear it.
Buy, sell.
Buy.
Buy,
Yeah.
sell.
No, literally, yeah, that's the vibes.
Buy
That's
it
the vibes.
now.
Yeah.
Nice. Good for you. Scum. Capitalist scum.
I fucking love it, dude.
I'm just kidding. I know you work with unionized people for that. Of course, teddyfresh.com is that sale going on. Support my exploited workers today.
Still?
It's ongoing. Most of it is gone, but it's worth a browse. All right, so I don't want to do all this news shit. I want to get straight into it. Oh, I have a separate doc. Okay,
Damn.
That's why I didn't see it. Hold on.
This man has his own doc, dude.
Oh,
Well, no,
shit.
because I put
You got some notes. That's fair.
what
Let
email
the
is this?
conversation
I say
begin.
let the conversation begin. All right, let me just share.
While you're looking for that, though,
I
can I
wanted to
just
said chat CCP.
chat CCP?
good.
That's good.
That's really good.
That's funny. I love that.
I'll just announce some breaking news I saw right before we went live. But Rupert, our boy
He died.
Rupert, did not die.
Yeah, he died.
he didn't die.
Yeah, can only hope.
But
dude.
he has stepped down. The Rupert Murdoch era is officially over.
I've seen
womp.
enough secession to know that he's going to come back. That's not
Actually, not a bad assessment.
he's not going to lose.
Yeah, Lackland is the fail son. He's not
sure.
gonna be able to fucking pull through.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Where's my document?
Dude, first he got cucked by Tucker Carlson and then like had to divorce his fiance that he was gonna get married to, and now he's like leaving his empire behind. What's happening to Rupert,
Happening to
man?
Rupe.
Ruby, you've lost your touch, brother.
guy I
Rupee.
had sex with who smoked crack with me.
That's what he wants to do in his retirement.
Yeah.
He wants to go out with style. Okay, here it is. I found it.
That would be so much better than whatever the fuck he did up until this very moment.
Smoke crack and die.
Just like go out and style. You don't even need to die. Just like have gay sex, do crack,
I would do hair in my retirement. I wouldn't mind doing heroin
Right?
just to ease out. Just be, just
Gay.
fucking. Because like, who cares if you get all strung out? And it's like, who gives a fuck?
You're like you're making an argument.
You're
for,
making the best of your time.
You're making an argument for palliative care, which I feel like
What is that?
it's like end of life, like death care, basically.
Is that hospice care? They do that.
No, I feel like there's this assessment from economists that there's going to be a major, and it's already started, a major boom in the like geriatric care and palliative care.
All the boomers are dying.
Because like the last, like what you would consider middle class of America is all in the boomer side. I mean boomer like in a boomer zoomer terminology. I mean like anyone over the age of fucking 50.
Like actual
basically.
baby boomers.
They're not actually, some of them are baby boomers. But they are all the people that are like desperately holding on to like whatever assets they have remaining.
Yeah.
So now they have money and they're the only people that have money. So you have to figure out how to like meet their needs.
How do we get it from them?
By insanely expensive.
We should make a hospice
and shit
care.
like that.
We should get their money, bro.
Oh, we should jack up the price of hospice
get
care
their
to kind
fucking
of
money,
extract
dude.
all that money. And
Yo, that's my money. Give it to me, bro.
Yeah.
Here, take this fentanyl and shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I feel like that would be pretty fire though, like what you're saying.
No, but seriously, what's the drawback to just going full heroin? Because listen, there's a reason people get addicted to it because it's good, it's fun.
Well, wouldn't you argue that morphine might be better?
But like,
heroin?
there's massive consequences.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the same drug.
Right, in a way.
It's just
that
a matter
already
of
happens
intensity.
with morphine
but
trips.
there's no drawback because obviously you don't want to be an addict during the middle of your life. There's so much you need to do, and being a heroin addict is just not compatible with living a normal life. But if you're in a retirement home, then
I feel like it's also more ethical than the way that they
it.
currently operate those places because it's like full of fucking theft and like assault.
Our boy David P&P is making a cleaning, dude, suing all these elderly homes. Anyway, let's move on. Let's
There's
get
a lot of awful
on.
shit
We have a lot to
happening there.
discuss, but we should get into that.
But like run an elderly care facility.
And then all the fans can send their parents.
Yeah.
And we'll kick it back to them. We'll give them
And we'll
half.
just fucking give them heroin. And then, the goal is we take
Kill that
half of
fat.
the inheritance. We take half of the inheritance, and then the other half goes to the children.
It goes back to them because they weren't going to get that money.
And that way, it doesn't even get hit by the estate tax because we already fucking taxed them.
Pound it.
Boom.
Genius shit. All right. First, I want to make this
People say
clear.
capitalism is not innovative, but we just innovated under capitalism.
I agree.
So fucking true. That's the entrepreneurial spirit.
I
Right
agree.
There.
This is some dude. By the way, Gary Vee is gonna do this.
You might already.
Yo, I've got a great idea. Let's make NFT critters out of your dead grandparents, you guys.
Bro, I saw like a statistic. I don't know how fucking true it is, but like, I mean, it feels very real. 95% of the NFT marketplace is now $0.
Yeah.
Like, it's collapsed entirely.
Of course it is.
So crazy how none of those people, none of those fucking charlatans that were advocating for this shit and trying to get you to hold the goddamn bag have been punished for it, including Gary Vaynerchuk, as a matter of fact.
He's
Many.
been real quiet on the V Friends front.
Perspectives.
Dude, it's like it should be studied how fast the media jumped on that train and was like, or at least alternative media outlets
Have you considered this, though?
jumped on it and were like pushing for it.
Have you considered this?
Fortune favors the brave. Don't show that to me. I'm gonna buy crypto right now, dude.
Have you considered that Matt Damon thinks fortune favors the brave, aka the dumb?
Matt Damon, son
AKA the
of
bro.
a like activist teacher, actually legitimately like a pretty, like back in the day at least, like old die in the wool lefty, fucking shilling cryptocurrency. You can't,
Fortune favors the brave, my friend. All right, so one thing I want to make clear before we engulf on this conversation is that me and you pretty much have like 95% crossover in terms of like our goal for the welfare of the people of our utopian society.
Yeah.
I mean, my guiding hope in social democracy is that you can take the both of best worlds, socialism and capitalism, and create a world where the poorest are cared for, where people can get free education, where people can get free housing, or not free but guaranteed housing, where they get a guaranteed education, higher education, and all this stuff. Okay, so let's talk about this now. My first question is this: given that, in a social democracy, we can regulate things like taxes, housing, higher education, sharing jobs, and all this kind of stuff, what are the problems in social democracy that we need socialism to address? What is it socialism does that social democracy doesn't do? So
social democracy is still capitalist, with serious, severe market regulations, right? Some forms of viable social democracies you can point to right now is places like Norway, an example I use regularly. The issue is twofold. One, social democracies don't address some of the domestic problems because when there's still capital accumulation.
So which domestic problems?
Domestic problems such as labor issues, homelessness, like there's no way to fully eradicate that because the inherent class contradiction between the owner class and the labor class still exists.
That's an assumption. I don't know that that's true. That there's just going to be, there's not going to be homelessness in socialism, but there will in social democracy?
Well, the idea is that completely abolishing the profit motive in certain commodities like housing, for example, will address that problem because then you're making housing specifically for need rather than so you can make money off of existing units.
Right, but there'd be government housing, like for example, I think that exists in Sweden.
Yeah.
Where if you're homeless,
places.
What?
Yeah, it exists everywhere.
So that's what I'm saying. There's not a profit motive. There's a humanitarian effort to house the people that need homes. And
sorry, he was eating a napkin.
You know, so I don't know what you mean that there's homelessness won't exist in socialism, but
she's eating all your tissues.
Oh, nasty.
Oh, yeah. She's eating all your tissues. Sorry.
That's gross.
Disgusting, girl.
Yeah.
Shame on you.
Yeah, she being a nasty girl today.
Better used to do that.
She being a real freak. Sorry. What were you
what's
saying?
the homelessness in Sweden? That just as a, I mean.
Oh, before we look
really
at those
low.
numbers, something to consider, something to remember always is that homelessness is tracked very differently in different countries.
Okay.
So, like, those numbers will always be, those numbers can be very different. Like, you could think like, oh, it's so much worse. Like rape statistics in Sweden. If you look at that, I think Love can attest to this too. You'd be like, whoa, what the fuck? It's crazy out there. People are raping like crazy, and it's because they have a different methodology for tracking rape. Like each individual act of sexual assault is tracked as like is written up as like one individual.
So then
act.
the actual number then isn't that important, but we acknowledge that in a social democracy that's run ideally, the homeless and whoever else needs a home for whatever reason would be provided one. So I don't understand what socialism does better in that case.
At the end of the day, these countries, the social democracies that we were talking about, still have a lot of wealthy individuals, a lot of people who are making money off of finance capital and capitalism in general. And their interests are always going to be to further erode the welfare state as best as they possibly can in an effort to claw back all of those areas that they could still technically privatize.
You're putting that on them, but that's not, if you have a strong social democracy, that wouldn't be possible.
Well,
my question to you would be, if everybody's provided for in the society adequately and fairly, then why do you care how much money somebody has?
Because, well, first of all, I don't, but the real reason is not necessarily money, but more so how people make their money. And how people make their money being through capital accumulation is always going to work to erode this nation, the social democratic state that you're mentioning. And the example I will use is Europe. Because, like, if you look at European social democratic reforms throughout history, things that a lot of people take for granted, even the NHS in the UK, for example, is not immediately privatized, obviously, but it is crippled under conservative administrations deliberately, specifically so that they can inevitably privatize certain aspects of it. It's kind of like how the same neoliberal reforms under the Reagan era wanted to openly starve the beast, the American government, which is why Americans no longer have any sort of confidence in the government to do any kind of social amenities, any kind of offerings, right? Like, you understand, you and I, we both are in the highest tax bracket. We live in Los Angeles, California. We pay a fuck ton of taxes. We pay like European taxes, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is we both recognize that those taxes don't necessarily go to the places that we would love for them to be spent on.
Definitely.
Roads, schools, libraries.
But what's that have to do with social democracy, that like my utopian social democracy?
Well,
because all that money in this, situation, it does go to those places.
Because America is still a capitalist nation, just like all of these other countries are.
Yeah.
And in a capitalist nation, you are always going to have the influence of capital.
Well, let me ask you this then.
Okay.
In a socialist nation, on the other flip of the coin, wouldn't you also have a similar movement of people, a party of people wanting to move towards capitalism?
There will always be, yes, people
So what's
who are
the difference?
counter-revolutionary.
Well, not just that. I mean, there's a move because capitalism, social democracy. There's a certain level of individualism that you don't have with socialism. Perhaps I would say, and so I would ask you, what's the difference? You're saying that social democracy nations the rich people are always going to be trying to erode the system. That's an assumption, by the way.
Well, it's not an assumption necessarily as
It's just not. It's
as
just not
descriptive in comparison to like. I mean, it's descriptive if you look at how it has played itself out in Europe, where we.
And you're right. I agree. That's what they'll be doing. So I'm not even going to argue.
Even America had a lot of social democratic principles in the New Deal.
I'm not even going to argue that. But I do think that in a socialist country, like I said, there's going to be a sizable amount of people moving towards capitalism. So what's the difference?
I don't know if it'll be as sizable, and there also always has to be a state mechanism of control, which exists in neoliberal capitalism as well. And this is actually an area where I very much diverge from other socialists, I would say, or even more orthodox Marxists, that I believe the neoliberal mechanisms of control, specifically, it's just, how do I describe it? Free market. Markets are better than the government at dealing with everything.
Okay.
So I think that there is two different, as reductive as possible, there's two different types of control. Control is always going to happen. This is what the state is there to do, right? Under liberal capitalist democracies in the West, you have a neoliberal mechanism of control that dulls the masses through commodities, gives you the false notion of choice. You feel like you have 32 different brands of Oreos, even though they're like owned by 3 companies that price fix, right? And they basically control all matter of commodities. And those markets are completely captured. But there's this idea that there are, this endless, boundless amount of choices that you can choose from. On the other side, the more authoritarian mechanisms of control, which have existed
What's your opinion?
I like the neoliberal one. I think that even in a socialist state, you should still very much give the people the false notion of choice and make it feel like they have a say in the process while doing the bidding of, I mean, it's a pretty cynical worldview, but I think that, that's what states are supposed to do.
Let me ask you this.
And that will create a structure where there are significantly less people who are like, I hate the system right now. I don't feel happy. I don't feel good in the system that I exist under. So I should, do counter-revolutionary capitalist reforms.
Well, and likewise, I don't think there's that many people in Sweden or Norway who are saying, no, we need to move to a pure socialist because everybody there is provided for. I don't think there's a large. I'm speaking at.
No, you're absolutely right. You're actually 100% correct.
So like
some Orthodox Marxists actually hate the welfare state for this reason, because the welfare state is a continuation of capitalism by offering certain amenities.
Seems like the
liberal capitalism has thrived and has created a structure where like the inherent contradictions that exist under capitalism that I think everyone would agree with, including yourself. Those inherent contradictions become a little bit more muddied, and they never end up getting to a point where they converge and capitalism erodes into some socialist formation.
Let me be, I guess, more specific. If you're in a socialist country, is there one party or multiple parties?
It depends. I mean,
because one party's scary, right? Can we agree on that? A one-party system is not a good system.
I think you and I would agree that we...
No. I'm just asking you. I don't care about the United States. I'm asking you about socialism.
I think that there are different forms of governance, and the United States is not that different.
I don't care about the United States. I just want to talk about a socialist
I think
country.
that no matter what happens, the state does what the state is supposed to do. You can either do it at the behest of your citizens because you genuinely, earnestly believe that, like, that is the best possible way of developing a society, or you do it at the behest of capital owners and capitalism.
So you're saying you don't think it matters if there's one party or
I don't think it
multiple
matters as far as I care about direct democratic participation in local in local
one
positions.
party systems with socialism or communism has pretty much always been a catastrophe.
Yeah.
Like a humanitarian disaster.
No, I agree with that.
There's just so much risk in having one party.
I agree with that. I think that a multi-party system is obviously going to be better. My point is that it doesn't even matter if you have a parliament. It doesn't even matter if you have a multi-party system. The changes that are being made in one direction or the other are oftentimes incredibly marginal. And the differences are not born out of like the party disagreements. The differences are born out of like genuine material conflict, like even including like the Civil War. It's never like the kindness of people's or like one party of individuals being like, we are kind, we want to do good things, and the other side is bad and they want to do bad things.
So what I want to say was this then. If you're in a socialist country with multiple parties, and one of the parties is a capitalist party, which would surely exist.
Yeah.
What would you do if that party started gaining momentum? And it was clearly like people wanted that route. They wanted that route.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
I think I would do what America has done, not to the same degree.
Which is what?
Not to the same degree as like McCarthyist trials or anything like that. But I would offer additional amenities to ensure that people are comfortable and happy, because I feel like
But what do you do if they're like, nah, fuck that, we're doing capitalism?
Well, if everything is given to you,
yeah,
at that point, if every single thing is given to you, if all of your problems are solved, which I think we can both agree is not under capitalism and has not happened.
No.
If all of those problems have been solved, then there is no need for conflict of that regard.
But they're saying, no, we want
ultimate.
Because they're like, yo, this is a free country, right? Well, we want to do capitalism. Yeah. We think the market should regulate the prices and shit. Like, we don't think the workplace should be socialized.
Okay, that's a great question.
And what if
you have to ask why though at that point? Because
people never can be explained by why anyway. You know what I mean?
Some people are gonna be dumb. You're right.
It's like you don't. It's just gonna exist. You know it is.
Yeah.
And so if the will of the people is to go back to do more of a social democracy, is that something that a socialist country should move towards, or should there be resistance in the government to keep socialism?
I think the resistance should be akin to how capitalist governments have resisted historically any kind of socialist movement, not to that same degree of violence, but I think that yes, the solution to that would always be education and offering more
re-education.
Re-education, certainly, yeah. I know that's like a
Let's
trigger
put them in
word.
Camps.
No, not like that. I know there's a trigger word because everyone goes, "Oh, re-education." What do you mean? Like immediately people think like, "Are you
China
talking
does
about
that.
Are you talking about like resident schools? Are you talking about the Xinjiang?" Yeah, 100%. They do. They do it. They did it in Xinjiang, which I think
good, right?
No, I don't agree with that. Yeah, I don't think it was good. This is something I have openly criticized as well. Like that's not good. The massive surveillance apparatus that they built in Xinjiang is not good.
So what would be good about a socialist re-education camp for capitalists?
It wouldn't necessarily. I don't think it'd be camps. I mean, it depends on crimes, right? Like, are people committing crimes at the behest of this? Because if there's a socialist state and someone is doing like white terror, let's say, or someone is doing South Korean style, purges of communists, which has happened historically in every country that America is aligned with, because they were anti-communist, where they've launched, military dictatorships, whether we recognize it or not. Those things have happened, right? So in a situation like that, I think if there's any kind of like terrorism happening,
sure, yeah. If there's violence, that's obvious.
I do think that there should be an enforcement mechanism, and in that enforcement mechanism, I think like rehabilitation, which would include re-education as well, would probably be a lot better than like a prison structure where they have slavery like in the United States of America.
I'm still a little bit confused about the ideal mechanism of a socialist country, where people still have individual freedoms to like form, to assemble, and can also be like, yeah, I'm a capitalist, so what? And we're trying to grow our movement. I don't understand the organization of the socialist free country, because it seems to me to have a socialist country there needs to be some amount of dampening of, rights.
Well,
Because, like, for what I said.
yes and no, because my point is always the same. It's that this is a constant. This is consistent. What you're describing is consistent with the American formation. It's consistent with capitalism. It's just a reality that will always exist. Violence and who gets to do violence is an inherent part of politics, because politics is, at the end of the day, a distribution of resources and a distribution of violence. Who gets to have what resources and who doesn't have the resources as a consequence of that. And if they do something to get those resources, what the state will be able to do. The state has a monopoly on violence across the board, no matter what happens, right? I'm not an anarchist. A lot of anarchists will get mad at me for saying this, but the state should have some level of a violent mechanism, because no matter what happens, and there's different forms of violence as well. The structural violence of poverty, or direct violence in the form of military boots on the ground, military warfare, imperialism, police violence, police brutality. These are all different forms of violence.
There will be some exertional force required to maintain a socialist country.
Yes, not just a social country, any country.
Sure, any country.
Yes. I agree. Until we reach a point of I guess, until we reach a point of production, and our productive output has gotten to a point where it's so streamlined and so organized that there is no need for a state. But I don't know if we will ever be able to get there, where the state withers away and we have a classless, borderless, moneyless society.
Yeah, I mean, if it is, it's not in a long time.
Techno-communist.
It'd have to be like post World War III or something. Let me ask you, I guess, another angle here. Worker exploitation seems to be at the heart of socialism and communism.
Yes.
And so I want to ask you this question. If an employee is fairly compensated, and by fairly, I mean that factors like work, compensation, they're being paid well beyond the means of living. They can afford comfortable housing, food, pleasure, vacation, savings, all the things people would want to do with money. If they're provided in all those ways that we see as important, is that still exploitation?
In the Marxian sense, yes. In the capitalist sense, no. Capitalism is seen...
Mark, when you say Marxism, you're talking about socialism.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
So, in the Marxist perspective, under Marxian economics, Marxist theory, exploitation is not a good or bad thing. It is just a thing that happens.
Okay.
And it goes back to something I've described many, many times over, which is that there are two classes. There is the labor class, the wage laborers, the proletariat, and the bourgeois class, the capital owning class, right? And these two classes have two inherently contradictory interests. You've worked jobs when you had a boss and someone was paying you, and you have been a boss, so you have gone through both of these stages. So as someone who worked in a job as a wage laborer, as a W-2 employer, 1099 contractor, you wanted to work the least amount of hours for the most amount of pay. That's understandable. That's like perfectly reasonable, right?
Yeah.
Like, you want more money and you want to work less hours. You want to have more freedom. Your boss, on the other hand, wants you to work the most amount of hours for the least amount of pay, like that they can get away with.
Yeah.
So this inherent contradiction is at the heart of capitalism and is how commodities are produced under a capitalist mode of production. Now, when you have this imbalance, those who do have capital end up always being able to pay you much less than your actual output.
So that is what's happening now.
Yeah.
My question is, in a situation, as I outlined, where the employees are fairly provided for, which I outlined before, is that when I say exploitation, I mean, like, I think that also has a vernacular, like when the ruling class is committing some kind of harm or injustice on their workers.
No, it's beyond that. You could be paying your employees fairly and still engage in the act of exploitation.
So then, because I don't want to get caught up on that, because you're saying exploitation is neutral by its
Yes, exploitation in the Marxian sense is not good or bad. It's just descriptive. a lot of what Marx has talked about with
But so
respect
what
to
does he mean
capitalism
then?
is descriptive.
What does he mean then when he goes the exploitation of workers? Clearly, he wants to end the exploitation of workers.
Yes, of course.
So is it still exploitation of workers if they're fairly provided for?
Yes, because the fairness in this regard is not met on the metrics of like living standards, but instead on the metrics of what their output is. So when and this gets into the labor theory of value.
Excuse me,
right?
goddamn.
The labor theory of value, which is different than marginal utility, which is what we use currently when we ascribe when we say this is this much, like something is this valuable, right? Ice cream is $4. But if it's really hot out, maybe ice cream is $5 because, well, there's a little bit of scarcity on the supply, but the demand has gone up. So now ice cream is more expensive. Whereas from a Marxian perspective, the value of that ice cream is stable. It's just what kind of labor went into the production of it. What were the resources used to make that ice cream? What kind of capital was put into the ice cream factory?
So even
all
if the
of that,
employee
and then also the moving part in that situation would be the labor of it.
If the employee is extremely satisfied,
Yeah.
and they feel well provided for, I mean, in a sense, it's like, who are you to tell him he's being exploited?
Well, you're
Again, I
You're
know
saying
you
that
want to
again
get
because,
caught up on
because
that,
it's
the
not-
definition of that word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's what I would say in that situation is this, right? Relying on the magnanimous nature of your boss and hoping that like your boss doesn't succumb to greed and choose to change certain things about your workplace conditions can be great. And there are people like yourself out there who are, as far as I understand, pretty good bosses, right? But that is never going to be that's never going to be the constant. That's never going to be the case.
But in social democracy, you set up the bumpers, you set up the systems where they have to do that. Well, that's the bare minimum they have to do.
Well, and then we go back to the erosion of the amenities that
I don't
the state
feel like that's
offers
a strong enough
regulation.
argument to say socialism's better.
No, as long as there is some kind of capitalist compensation in any sort of sector, they will always choose to monopolize. This is what most companies, like this is what every company does when they become a company, a corporation. Their job is their goal is to inevitably become a monopoly. You can do that by rent seeking.
Well, so what? So what? If they still have to follow the rules.
Well, no. When you are becoming a monopoly, you are either engaging in horizontal integration and expansion or vertical integration and expansion, mergers, acquisitions, and what Amazon has done, for example, in e-commerce is a great example of this. And when you get to that point, especially under a capitalist state that still has market reforms, you end up using the additional capital that you've accumulated in the form of profits from your workers to lobby the government and erode the safety nets.
But you're talking like it's a guaranteed. And again, I go back.
It has been a guarantee every single time.
And it's been a guarantee by the same metric that any socialist country devolves into disaster. I mean, it's not fair to put that out there like it's just given. Because on the other flip coin, you can say, this, like I mentioned, socialism. There's going to be people moving towards capitalism.
So socialist nation states,
it's too hypothetical.
Socialist nation states, however, historically, most of them at least, have not eroded or been destroyed due to like people who are just like, I want to be capitalist. Usually, those people are being goaded or supported, facilitated by a much more powerful nation that is using the inherent greed to their advantage to cause divisions. But the real material issues in socialist nation states, historical socialism, real socialism in the real world that has happened, has always been due to mishaps, famine, or the government exercising too much authoritarian control.
Yeah, you could say the same thing.
These sorts of things are the real reasons as to why socialist nation states have failed, not necessarily their economic mode of production switching over to a more labor-focused economy. And then also, there are so many different types of socialist developments, like a socialist mode of production, that there is no like one absolute perfect one. And I'd be a liar if I told you I know which one it is. You know what I mean?
So go back to the original question. Let's just ignore this theory that in social democracy, and I'll say this, obviously we have antitrust laws that are not good, that are not been effective in the least bit.
Yeah,
That's
I would
also
ask you
something
why.
you can regulate.
No, but I would ask you why.
Well, because our government is super corrupt.
Why is the government corrupt?
Because people are inherently flawed.
You think the government's corrupt because people are inherently flawed? Corruption in that sense, I disagree with you there.
Some people, not all people.
No,
That's another thing I said.
I
People
know.
are inherently greedy and people lost their mind. Some people are. Actually,
reason-
I want to talk about that at better length, but go ahead.
That's actually a great take as well. We can cover that as well.
Yeah, I do want to.
I always butcher this quote, but I forget who it was. It might have been Mark Fisher, might have been someone else. But assuming that greed is inherent in human nature under a capitalist organization of the economy is like assuming the black lung is inherent
I'm not
in human
saying
nature
capitalist.
if you work at the fucking coal mine.
See, that's not a good analogy.
Because no, you're
In my
right.
opinion.
Greed is a part of it. Self-interest is a part of it. Not greed necessarily, but self-interest is a part of human existence. Why we have built societies and how we've
Self-interest
done it. However,
Is a biological survival
exactly.
mechanism.
However,
If we didn't have self-interest, we wouldn't survive as a species.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. My argument always, and many Marxist arguments actually, have always been around individualism and self-interest, and how socialism, as a matter of fact, creates more opportunities for individual liberties for the person. It's only been sold and told to people as though it is, this gray, brutalist architecture, city blocks. You have to, do your government mandated coal mining job or whatever the fuck. But the ultimate goal has always been to open up more individual liberties. I'll give you an example of socialization that you and I both agree with, right? Healthcare. Nationalized healthcare or socialized medicine in general gives you more liberties as a person that you can actually leave your job if you fucking
that would
hate
happen
it.
in a social democracy as well.
Yes. However, like I've said, there has to be the countermeasures in a social democracy are the capitalist forces are significantly more powerful because ultimately the state is still operating as a capitalist state. That is still the norm.
So I think we're having like a kind of just like a disconnect, or not a disconnect, but maybe at an impasse on that idea. But what I'll say, I want to give you a specific example because this is interesting to me. Let's just take this workplace as an example because we're all familiar with it. So I started my career 10 plus years ago, and I was successful by myself with 0 employees.
Yes.
I made a lot of money. I did well for myself. And then, 5 years ago into my career, I made the podcast, which obviously you all are watching now. So let's say we go back to 5 years ago when I hired Dan as a freelance. You started as like a consultant.
Or a freelancer. Yeah.
And obviously you moved to full-time, and I'll get to that.
Yeah.
So he started as like a freelance consultant. So what would be a fair way of compensating him for that?
In your situation, it's like, what is the most like socialist way of doing it? Is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah, because that's what we're talking about, right?
It would be profit sharing. What
so
that
I
means
just
is,
so this is interesting.
so
Hold on.
This is interesting. You're right, because
Yeah.
this is actually the most difficult aspect, in my opinion, of like trying to create the most ethical way of existing under a capitalist organization of the economy while you are also productive and you're doing like an owned and operated media company where you are the product.
So I hired Dan as a consultant.
Yeah.
Just to help us out to get things
And I have hired
beautified.
people as well.
So then I'm profit sharing with him. How much profit am I sharing with him?
So the way I do it, and I think this will be I mean, this is instructive for many others as well. The way I do it, like the most ethical way to do it, is basically try to make an assessment. Sure, there's market considerations on the one hand, like what the normal wage would look like, but that is like the minimum. You know what I mean? That is like the minimum. That is the worst possible amount to pay someone in the form of wages, in my opinion.
Okay.
So you have the market considerations on the one side, which I don't necessarily care too much about. On the other side, you have your productive output, right? Let's say you were making $10 before Dan came on, and now that Dan came on, you're making...
That wouldn't be measurable metric.
No. I know. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I know. Which is why I'm saying it's a tricky situation.
It seems almost impossible.
Yeah. Well, technically, the other side is also very cruel, but we just like have
that's
normalized.
Not true, because in social democracy, people are fairly compensated. It's not cruel, in my opinion.
No, there's. I don't think. I think
people
think
can be
more or
less fairly compensated, but like generally speaking, they'd be more fairly compensated than what you would see today.
Yes, in comparison to the United States of America, which technically would be a mixed market or social democracy. Social democracies in other countries, there is better compensation.
So here's the unintended consequence of that.
Due to regulation, government regulation.
If I'm just hiring Dan to come in and help me with cameras and stuff, and I have to cut him in on profit share, people are not going to hire as many people. They're going to think a lot more before they bring more people on.
Well, can I just chime in real quick? Just to clarify this point, are you still talking about the period of time where I was working as a contractor?
Yes. I haven't gotten to the full time yet. Well, we're going to move to that.
Right. I will just say that at the time, I was essentially operating as my own business as well, because you weren't my only client at the time.
Right. Okay.
I did that professionally for a lot of people, and you were one of many people that I would come and do shows with until you offered me a full-time thing. So just because we're using the specific example, I just wanted to clarify that, because I think that matters in what the dynamic was when we were initially working together.
I don't think that matters in such that I'm more focused just on the profit sharing.
The reason why I was bringing up
the implications on to a business and business owner of that.
Okay, but the reason why I was bringing up the revenue is because let's say you were making you're making $10. Dan comes on, now you're making $15.
Yeah.
Right? Dan has brought in $5 extra of revenue for you, and I think that the best possible way to engage with that would be to cut Dan in on offer Dan living wages plus whatever Dan has brought in the form of revenue.
So here's a big problem.
And that moves in the direction like you make, and then later down the line you make $100,000 and it moves with Dan is moving with it as well.
Here's where this seems more like it's a nice theory, but like in application, it makes no sense. Who decides how much value he's brought? How could you possibly decide that? If my show is growing, Dan joins, and let's say, now I'm making $15, but the show was organically growing. How can I attribute all 5 of that to Dan?
You're absolutely correct on this as well. This is a big weakness.
50-50 with him?
This is something that I do not have an answer for either, which is why,
it doesn't
like I said, I said, you make do with you try to do your very best.
This seems like a big problem to say you don't have a solution for if you're advocating for a socialist society.
I agree, which is why I always...
It doesn't seem like it's ready.
Well, can I just chime in on this? This isn't theoretical. There are lots of companies that do profit sharing.
I do this as well.
I know, but it's not like...
But like
let's
big
say
companies.
this.
They have various methods of how they do it.
There are ways that do it that make sense.
I do this
but the way that socialism does it in the purest sense is like Dan joined 10 to 15. Dan gets half of the 15. So that's his
Ethan,
labor.
Ethan, this is if we're talking pure theory.
Hold on one sec.
If we're talking pure theory, I would rather have an imperfect structure that still absolutely offers better.
It doesn't work.
Well,
if you don't know how people get paid, how does it even work?
The capitalist structure also is imperfect in the exact same way.
It's functioning at least.
Yes, I know, but the idea that like the other structure would not function is not correct. Especially when we're telling you that even under a capitalist organization economy, there's plenty of different ways of doing this.
But there needs to
one of the most successful ones that I also have is a cooperative, right? I have a cooperative, collectively organized podcast, for example, where we just split it 5 ways regardless. Obviously, my output in that situation, given that I am the host with the largest audience, would significantly outweigh my producers, for example, who could be paid with a very fair, very fat market wage, right? Market wage plus market wage times 3 is what I could pay him, and it would still be significantly less than what he gets paid now.
Yeah.
Because we're cutting him in 5 ways. We're splitting everything 5 ways.
Yeah.
And that is a perfectly viable way to do it, because
I think that's very generous, but I don't think you should be forced to do that.
I think
you should be forced to pay him what we've determined as a minimum wage, where he can live in where he lives in a comfortable state.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
And I don't think that it prevents people from being
it goes beyond wages too.
Generous.
It goes beyond wages as well. There's also another aspect of this that many people fail to consider, which is decision making. So there's also the structure of decision making, the structure of autonomy. When we are setting up the time for when we are going to shoot the podcast, like, everyone has to be on board with it. It has to work around every single person's schedule. These are all scheduling conflicts exist usually, but it's like in good faith, every single person is like giving their most, giving their all, and it ultimately, I think, creates a pretty solid product.
Let me ask you. So, do you acknowledge that in this socialist theoretical country, where I go from 10 to 15 and I give Dan 15, hypothetically for any worker joining, that I, as a business owner, I would be less likely to be hiring people?
Certainly.
And that's not good, is it?
No, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing at all.
Because, like, I don't know, because, like, I've gone through a lot of people that did not work out.
Mm-hmm.
And they were hired on, like, let's say,
you can still fire them.
Exploratory. So is it at will employment in this situation?
In this structure, you can still, of course, like, you can still have issues with an employee and fire them. It's ironic because, like, Japan, for example, is like the most capitalist country on the planet, and yet in Japan they have this like very unique culture where getting into a place of business is very difficult. But once you actually have made it into the corporation, they don't fire you. They can't fire you. They never fire you. What they do is they ostracize you and make you into a social pariah within the company, and try to get you to quit.
Is it because they're trying to avoid paying some kind of severance, or is it just
no? It's like it's both cultural, and if I'm not mistaken, it could literally have legal implications as well. But it works, right?
Okay,
it technically works.
But I'm saying, why is it? Hey, why is it not a good? So as a business owner, I think the fact that I was not super hesitant to hire lots of people, to find the crew that worked. I worked with a lot of people who were not compatible. So I was able to burn through enough people to find a team that worked, right?
Kaya,
and so if I was so hesitant to hire people because I have to profit share with them, I would do like a way more strenuous interview process. It would take way longer.
Yeah, you're making an argument for why it's stronger. Like, you
I don't
lucked out
think
with
so
Dan.
at all.
You lucked out with Dan.
I don't think that's a good argument, because first of all, it's good that people can go try a bunch of jobs before they find one that works. And as an employer, it's good to be able to try a bunch of people. Do you find the right fit for employees? If I had to go through this strenuous process to find each one of them, this podcast may very well likely not exist as it does today. Might not exist at all.
I disagree with you on that for sure. I think that it's better to have a strenuous process of ensuring that you have the best possible person.
For like the most entry level job.
Yeah, I think that it's
then
perfectly valid.
Doesn't that result in people not getting work?
So, yes, it will. So but then we're talking about like an entirely separate way of organizing the economy.
Let me go back. Why is it better? Why is it better that I have to go through like extraneous full-on HR processes?
We're talking about hypotheticals. In this situation.
Yeah.
So I can just hypothesize that you found Dan. Not even hypothesize.
Well, no, we're not talking. Well, we're talking hypothetically, but we're talking.
You found Dan, so you clearly.
But we went through a lot of people before we found Dan.
Yeah. Well, you could have arrived at Dan as well, is what I'm saying.
It would have taken a lot longer, and the business might not have survived.
Okay. So
there was a point where the podcast almost got wrapped up.
Yeah.
So why is it better in theory to have that extraneous of a hiring process than being able to kind of just people try things out?
This is only one aspect of it, but what you're talking about, like the extraneous hiring process, also would exist under a social democracy as well. It should exist in some form under a social democracy as well, like some level of protection from being fired.
But so in social democracy, you're not rev sharing. So there's like this big thing that you're like, I'm a business owner. I've created this business from my own sweat and blood and tears over the last 10 years, and I'm making a lot of money. I got to hire this guy who I don't know anything about, and I got to cut him in on my profits. That doesn't exist in social democracy. So the risk to me as the business owner is way less.
But it's much smaller, to a much smaller degree, because it's supposed to exist through unions. And once again, it's not just revenue sharing. Everyone always focuses on that aspect of it. But rev sharing comes in the form of benefits. Rev sharing comes in the form of like how much we invest in R&D, for example, or what kind of R&D initiatives we invest in. All of these decisions are made by a board.
Well, that's all regulated.
Fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders that is not regulated under social democracy. This is the major point of contention. What do you mean by rev share then? Because you see, in our example, like in Germany, they have a trade union representative that sits on the board of executives, but that's only one aspect of a larger board that is still representing the interests of the shareholders. Those who own the company, who never have seen the company. They can, even globally own it, right? So having one vote in that situation is not as good, in my opinion, as having all of the vote, all of the power, making these decisions as a collective. Something that kind of is not legally enforced here, right, in your structure, but you abide by because you're a nice guy. Many people are not going to be like that. And I'm saying that we shouldn't rely on the magnanimous nature of bosses.
We're going back to this point because we don't have to with the right.
Well, even an example like the one I mentioned in Germany still yields terrible, still is susceptible to the influence of capital.
Let me ask you this.
Wait, yes, it is.
Germany arguably is.
Yes.
Not as much as
okay, I don't know a lot about Germany, so I'm not gonna. I don't want to get into that.
America is a social democracy as well. The problem is, like, American social democracy is a laughable example of.
So let's
social
not use it then. But going back, why is it better? Because I don't think I ever got an answer to have a strenuous hiring process.
Need a laptop that's built to perform and designed to last all day? Select Windows 11 PCs starting at $499.99 are now at Best Buy. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Why is it better to have a strenuous? When you engage in commodity production with another person, I think it's perfectly valid to ensure that this person is not going to be like a scumbag and cheat you, fuck you over. I think it's good business practice, even in a capitalist sense, to ensure that the person that you're hiring is not like some fucking random dickhead.
That's just common sense.
And the more you
grow, do acknowledge that. So you do acknowledge the hesitancy to hire people.
I do. I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing.
I don't know what. Okay, we'll move on.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
I guess a bit of an impasse again.
Because as companies grow, you have different people in different units that also are, engaging in hiring. Like, it's just that workers now have more of a say in which direction the company should go. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Worked for me for like a week. And on my business, I spent 5 years building. I don't want to give him a decision on where the company goes.
I think that...
Why should he have that right?
Well,
you know what I mean?
I'm not saying the janitor comes in and unilaterally makes decisions. That's not how that works.
But I'm curious how it does work.
So it's communication. The other person is a human being as well. If you have a major disagreement, then you look for someone else to work in that position. This is how it works.
Okay.
The only difference in that situation is that you don't have the fear of like subsistence living at the other end of that bargain. Whereas like you have better amenities, better protections, and therefore you're more comfortable.
You just made good living conditions because.
The idea is
that's what I'm already saying. That I don't think that makes socialism unique because we can provide good living conditions and benefits.
We can, but we haven't. Now that, by the way, one aspect of social democracy that we've talked about is the domestic one. we have yet to even uncover the other much worse side of social democracies, which is resource extraction in the third world and imperialism. And that is a necessity under global capitalism. And that is the reason why we have the haves and the have-nots. On the domestic level, you believe that there is a regulatory agency that can make things more just.
I don't feel prepared to have a conversation about the third world stuff because I'm not super familiar with it.
Perfectly fine.
But like I can.
But you understand that like that's a part of how everything works.
Exploiting in the truest sense of the word is definitely what's been happening.
Even on a capitalist understanding, that's like hyper exploitation.
I mean, clearly, I think that all humans on this earth deserve rights and comfort and a right. You know what I mean?
It is funny though. Like, one thing I will mention in the domestic, going back to the labor force thing, is that like we're so susceptible and so programmed under capitalist dogma that we refuse to see a world outside of it, and we're so captured in that worldview that oftentimes the number one counter against a socialist governance or democracy in the workplace or anything like that is always like, what do you want, the fucking janitor just came in yesterday to make these decisions? Like, no one said he's the CEO now.
I just want to understand how it works because you keep saying rev share.
Rev share is only one component of it. Rev share can be democratically assigned.
Say what?
Okay, here is an example. When I first started the podcast, I was originally undercast. It was fucking terrible. We quit. We started our own podcast, me and Will. We needed a producer because we don't have that skill set. We needed someone to change the cameras and maybe do a little bit of, someone to post the videos, do the captions, titling, thumbnailing, right? So in that situation, we looked for someone. We found someone. And we were splitting it 3 ways. We were splitting the revenue 3 ways, anything that we made, right? And even before that, I was also giving March money as well to make sure that he like at least had a fucking, had a revenue opportunity even when we weren't generating a lot of revenue.
Okay.
Right? So what did I do after that? The podcast grew. Fear and now has 5 cast members. We brought in Austin Show, my good friend, and Cutie Cinderella. And when that happened, us 3, we got together and we had a conversation.
Okay.
Do we need more hosts? Do we think that this will be beneficial?
Right.
Right? Do we think that we will end up making, more revenue, generating more revenue in the long run?
Right.
Will we have people with unique creative ideas? Like, I care more about the creative output than anything else, than revenue. I haven't even touched the fucking revenue that I've generated from the podcast. And we got together and we had a conversation. And I think that is a significantly more equitable and just and better way of doing business than me hiring March, me giving Will some money originally, like a fat salary, or maybe cutting in on the rev share for him, and then giving March like a super high fucking wage, right? Way higher than like the average producer, and then making these decisions single-handedly.
Let me add another aspect to your example. Let's say you need to hire a cleaner to come clean the office. She works for the podcast. She comes, she cleans the office. She works full time. How do you pay her?
The cleaner side of this is not like, I don't have an office like that, but the janitorial services,
just theoretically,
in a theoretical situation where we have someone that needs to do it, we would also get together as a unit. Okay, the existing company would get together and decide what level, just like hiring the 2 other hosts, we decide what level of revenue cuts we are going to take from our 5% to give
you're making her
to the
a
other
job offer.
person.
It's not really that different than a salary.
And once they get that job, and there are many different ways of doing this, but once they get that job, and let's say they worked for 2 years, 3 years, then they have a say in the revenue sharing structure and the power sharing structure as well. Because it doesn't have to happen like instantaneously. A lot of people forget that.
My problem is that in the socialist economy, this is being regulated by the government. People can get together now and decide to do whatever the fuck they want in their company, and that's great. But in the socialistic economy, there's rules that says you need to pay her X amount of rev share.
What you're saying is not true.
Okay.
You want to know why?
Yes.
Because you want a social democracy, which kind of exists, and market regulation exists under capitalist formations, And plenty of capital owners hate that. As a matter of fact, I would say universally capital owners hate any kind of market regulation, which is why they choose to erode it as best as they possibly can, or they use it to their advantage to create an artificial barrier of entry into certain sectors.
I'm saying in a socialist economy, there's going to be laws. That
just like there are laws in a capitalist economy that capital owners
socialism, how I'm saying the government is telling you how much you need to pay the janitor.
That's not how that would work.
Then how would it work?
But
it would be government.
Isn't that how is that functionally different than a minimum wage in our society?
That's my point.
Yeah.
Why do they?
Well, then,
but socialism is much more radical. We're talking.
It's not.
Social.
It doesn't have to be.
Moving America to a purely socialistic society. Instead of my thing is, I think social democracy is better than socialism. And you guys are explaining something that to me sounds a lot like something that we can already do without this huge undertaking of changing our economy from a capitalistic social democracy one to a socialism one. You're talking about a minimum wage. We already do that. And we can already do better with that via regulations.
But,
so why
but the reason why we haven't been able to is because, like, I think the best way to explain it is this way, okay? You like capitalism with socialist characteristics. I like socialism with capitalist characteristics.
Yo, you just said that. So we're both social Democrats.
So that doesn't mean that I still believe that the government should be.
Wait, what's the difference now? You said you like socialism with capitalism.
I said I like socialism with capitalist characteristics, meaning that the governing economy, like the entire economy, still revolves around a socialist mode of production where the owners, the workers are the owners. They own the means of production. They have they have a say in their benefits. They have a say in what happens in the company. And I can fire them whenever I want, though. Well, there will still obviously be protections against like unjust firings and whatnot. And there should be, certainly.
There are now.
And there are now as well. Except
really good.
America is a great example of.
In California, there are really.
America is a great example, however, of like how there aren't.
Which how it shouldn't be, and it shouldn't be that way.
Exactly. Yeah. But the reason why it's not that way is because we have capitalism with like laughable socialist characteristics.
Dude, I find it very interesting that you're saying you want socialism with capitalist characteristics.
Capitalist characteristics in the sense that it doesn't touch the means of production or the mode of production, but offers an abundance of resources and offers the idea that you have freedom. One of the major problems with former historic socialist projects have always been commodity production being streamlined on necessity, and not necessarily silly things like lighter production, industries that revolve around making, chocolate and coffee. Coffee was a major problem in East Germany. So like things of that nature that people need, I think those are things that we need to work on. And that capitalism, I think, has done a much better job at offering to people. And that has a very sedating influence on the masses.
I don't
consumerism.
I don't see what's so great and humanizing about hiring a janitor for 0.00015% of the company.
What do you? I don't understand. That's not what I said. You just made that assertion.
But we're saying there's a minimum wage. There's a minimum equity share that janitor would need to get.
Well, are you talking about in comparison to doing profit sharing model? We're talking about a socialist
minimum wage.
Right. But comparing it to a model where employees are cut in on the profit is what you're saying. Comparing that, what we have now to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, I would just point out that, so first of all, you had talked about it a lot earlier about like, what companies do that. There's a lot of examples of bigger firms that do this kind of thing.
Okay.
A great one is Southwest Airlines. Did you know that they have a massive employee profit sharing model?
How does it work? What's the details?
So it's a once a year payment, and they look at how they did the last year, and then a certain percentage of the profits they distribute as bonuses to all of the employees. And it's fairly significant.
Dude, that's great. Mm-hmm. But in a socialist country, that's it? That's all you want? Because that's easy. You know what I mean? Like Like, what are you asking for when you're asking for socialism? Just a bonus fund based on profit? Because that's easy.
No, not necessarily. But I'm listen. I wasn't trying to make any assertion about that. I was just trying to give you an example of. You were asking earlier, like what companies do that.
I think that's awesome.
Here's a big one that does it.
I think that's awesome, and I'd even be in favor of regulating that and saying, "Yo, you need to put aside like 5% or 10% or whatever. I don't care of your profits to distribute evenly amongst your employees." Is that socialism?
No, that
all it takes?
That would be some aspect of socialization, especially if it's like earned by the workers that have some level of collective bargaining.
It just seems so bureaucratic. I don't understand the workplace.
Bureaucracy still is very much the foundation of a bourgeois state as well. It's just that we
dude,
don't think
I'm
about
talking like this is bureaucracy on bureaucracy on bureaucracy.
No, I don't
understand your workplace.
I'll tell you
if
this
that's
much.
not good enough, then what is?
Here,
I don't understand.
There is, I think it's called People's Republic of Walmart. It's a really good book. And so like
the title.
There was a genuine problem in the USSR with how to deal with crops and agriculture. And central planning, unfortunately, had limitations at the time because we did not have the computational power. One of the, ironically, steps in the right direction was actually coming from Chile, which then got their own 9/11 50 years ago, but we won't get into that because, socialism bad. But there wasn't enough computational power to implement centralized planning at that time effectively, and it led to plenty of issues, right? So ironically, nowadays we have centralized planning inside of Walmart, inside of Amazon, and these companies are generating a ton of revenue that they could cut their workers into. Maybe they would be much smaller. Maybe they would be much smaller.
What's the
in
minimum
size.
that would make it socialist? That's what I'm curious about.
I don't think there's like an exact dollar value, rather than, because you're looking for an exact dollar value, rather than I'm talking about an entirely different way of thinking.
But there's the law. There's a law in a socialist country that says you must do.
I'll give you one example. I'll give you a good example from your life, right? Right now, you have Cam, right? Cam does wonderful goofs, gaffs, and Photoshop.
Splaps.
We love Cam.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Let's give it up for
that
Cam.
nature.
Let's give it up for Cam real quick.
Yeah.
I love you guys. I love you guys.
So technically, if you were interested in maximizing your revenue, what you could have done instead of hiring Cam was outsource it to Fiverr, or I don't know, get like some Filipino graphic design company. If you were one of those like TikTok guys out there who's like, I fired my entire workplace and like fucking hired everyone in Pakistan for 5 cents an hour. It's fucking sick. Like, you could be one of those guys and do that. But the reason why you didn't do that is because you feel as though correctly that Cam yields better output. Hey, no.
Chewing?
She almost. I caught her.
Do it.
No.
You do it.
No.
Alfredo, you got to enforce the law on her.
No.
Alfredo has no interest.
Alfredo, you have a monopoly on violence in this office.
Dog. Sorry.
It's okay. A welcome
Welcome to
A
Strike.
welcome break.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please continue of how cool I am.
So you don't do that, and there should be restrictions on that. Certainly, like there should be restrictions on being able to do that, being able to just like completely outsource your workplace. Those restrictions can come in a capitalist country in the form of tariffs, which many do. Protectionist trade or protocols exist globally, with the exception of the United States of America, which has some protectionist policies. But others that, most protectionist policies still benefit the interests of capital rather than the working class there. And trade partnerships have created a structure where, like, labor has been outsourced overseas. Our manufacturing capabilities have been completely outsourced. These are very bad things that exist exclusively due to greed that you understand under capitalism, that needs to constantly be put in check. But a government that is designed, a government that's full of rich people, that is interested in their own wealth and wealth accumulation, that has stock options and trades like Paul Pelosi, and has that gets jobs for their family members in Goldman Sachs, like Ted Cruz and many other examples, is never going to truly represent the interests of the working class, and is always going to put the interests of capital ahead of the interests of the working class. You will never be able to have a real democracy. That's the difference between a bourgeois democracy and a proletarian democracy, or a dictatorship of the proletariat, rather than a dictatorship of the capital owning class.
I just want to know how the socialist workplace works. It seems so nebulous when you talk about it.
Why is it? I don't think it's nebulous at all.
There's gotta be. Okay,
I have a
maybe we
living,
should move
breathing,
on.
working
We're
example
at
of it
impasse.
that I've given you.
I know, but like, there's got to be like a constitution that says, outlines, or I don't know, whatever the fuck you want to write, right? There's got to be something, and it says like, or rule laws that says, you know, this is the minimum that a person should get from the company.
Yes.
And
it
what
should
would that
be married to the
it'd be-
output. It should be married to the productive forces. It should be married to the output. That should be pegged.
We talked
to-
about this enough, though. I don't want
That
to bore
should be
people.
pegged to the performance. And I think that that is the best possible way to work.
I guess my problem on that is like, how could you possibly
enforce that?
No, not even enforce. How could you possibly even analyze that? Like, how much more? How much more money are we making because the janitor comes in?
That's where we go to the Walmart example. That like we are already completely aware of that. We have, you know, we have actuaries, we have CPAs that are working in real time, making mathematical equations to figure out exactly what not to pay people technically. And they could be in a total social reorganization of the economy with a socialist dogma.
Okay. So
would work in the opposite direction.
Okay.
It's kind of like this.
Please, let's move to another topic.
Okay.
I don't want to bore people.
Well, wealth was one aspect of this, right? Like we already have property taxes, for example, in America, but we never make similar mathematical equations on capital gains, earnings that you make in the stock market. Wealth accumulation could work in the exact same way as property taxes, and yet we don't have any mathematicians working on that.
That's a good idea, but
and that's a great idea, right?
People probably do that in a lot of countries that aren't socialist.
Well, this is not just the distinction between socialism
But that's
and whatnot, because there is. We talked about
But I
theory.
think that's
We talked
good.
a lot about theory, but then we also have to talk about like what is possible, right? At least in the short term, and that is the reason why I always try to tell more rugged, more rigid, more passionate socialists.
That's where I'm coming from,
To
though.
cooperate, I know, to cooperate with people that are also perceived as radicals in America. Like, there's a reason why Bernie Sanders, who has been a socialist his entire life, basically has only implemented, instituted, or advocated for social democratic reforms in the United States of America. That's it. That's the only. There's the only reason why he's done that is so that he can inspire the masses and create an opportunity where workers have more control over their own lives and develop autonomy and inevitably develop class consciousness, creating ample opportunity for, if you believe in that sort of thing, socialist revolution.
Right, but that would never happen if the people were happy with their conditions. I feel like that would not happen. But anyway, so let me ask you this, to peg this down even more. In a socialist workplace, a socialized workplace, certain jobs are still going to get paid more than others, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's still going to be class. There'll be class, right? There'll be class distinctions in a socialist.
No, the class distinction is not on pay. That's a liberal understanding. That's actually
You
why.
don't think people will be like, I see people like, you're the rich dude in the Porsche, and I'm the working class dude in the
Great
Toyota.
question. Great question.
You don't think people will see that?
So social hierarchies are inevitable. There will be different kinds of hierarchies. What you're talking about is perfectly valid, but the class distinction in a socialist economy is completely abolished, because the idea is there will be those who have and those who have not, is what you're saying, at least in the interim.
Everyone will have. But there'll be
everyone
people
will
that have more.
Exactly.
People who will have a lot more.
Yes. Some people that want to have more will be able to have more, and even a lot more. Yes. This is why I always.
And they'll be part of a class, don't you think?
This is why I always talk about, because they have no control over the lives of others in that regard.
I find this idea that like people in a socialist country who have a lot more, they're able to make a lot more money, somehow won't be influenced by power or influence or greed, that somehow in this society
you're saying no matter what
magically
happens,
dispelled.
it will turn into capitalism, is what you're saying.
I think
there will be
well, these people are going to be influencing the system
concentration
to benefit
of power.
themselves.
Yes. The best way to stop that from happening is democracy. Democracy in the workplace, we cannot even imagine. Mark Fisher once said, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. And he was right. This is capitalist realism, because we are having this argument within the boundaries and within the cultural understanding of like existing capitalism today. And the reality is, we have no way, you and I, as it stands, I have no way of like helping you try to imagine a world where like each individual worker has more autonomy and does not suffer from alienation in their workplace, which would offer them plenty of more educational opportunities, plenty more free time. I guess the example you can point to in terms of different degrees of socialization would be a person doing contracted work at Uber, okay, to make ends meet in America, versus like a regular unionized factory worker in Germany. The level of autonomy that they have, and the level of interest that they have, and the level of engagement that they have in a workplace democracy or some form of it, is drastically different than the contracted Uber employee. Their worldview is drastically different. Their democracy yields drastically different results as a consequence.
But let's be realistic. We're not going to spring into an alternate reality where capitalism doesn't dominate the world.
Which is why
we have to be realistic.
Which is why I always advocate for.
Which is part of why I'm saying.
No, but that's why I always advocate for. That is why I always advocate for, in the interim, social democratic reforms that will yield more opportunities for workers to organize. Now, of course, you can prove.
I want to follow this out a little further, because I think it's interesting. So, in a socialist country, there's going to be people who make a lot more, and within a company, are they exploiting their workers? The CEO, the founder of a car company, he makes a lot more than the workers.
As long as it is democratically organized, in the sense that like every single person is like, no, your productive output in this circumstance is significantly higher than us, then yeah, that would be.
And how do they determine that?
Through a democratic process.
They have like a vote for everybody in the company has equal ballot power?
Depending on like how long you've worked at the company and things of that nature. These are different formations at this point. Like this is, now we're getting into like how do we organize our workplace, and like how much power do we give each individual vote in the workplace. Yes, they would have one vote, but ultimately what are the matters that they are tasked with voting on? And there's like even in unions, there's a structure, right? Like every single person does have a vote. The rank and file will always vote, but there's still a negotiations committee. There's still someone engaging in the contract negotiations.
Let me say this.
There's still elections being held inside of the union. Does that make sense?
It does. But here, does this make sense?
Yeah.
You're inside a, and I want to ask you, Dan, because I'm curious about your opinion. You're inside a big company. Let's just say they make cars. There's tons of employees there. The CEO, founder, he makes a lot more than the employees. Do you think that the leaders should make more than the workers, Dan?
Well, it just kind of depends on I mean, I think there's nuance there, because I think it really depends on what the company looks like, how it operates. Should the CEO, who is on a day-to-day basis working and managing a company, make more money?
He works the same hours as the production people.
I mean, with more responsibility, I think should inherently come with some more privilege. However, I mean, now are we talking about a CEO or are we talking about an owner? Because a lot of owners don't do shit.
No, I'm talking about someone who's working because the idea of ownership is probably different in a socialist.
Right, and the owners may be private or it may even be a public company.
The CEO. So you agree he should make more? So
it just depends.
There's not room for nuance. There's just not.
What do you mean?
If you're living in a socialist country, this shit needs to be like laid out. Like there's not room for nuance. In every workplace, we're going to decide little different rules for everything.
Under capitalism, where you have the freedom to fucking
but there's
operate
rules
in that
like
regard.
minimum wage.
But with rules, exactly, you would have the similar structure. Pegged to like.
I'm trying to ask you guys what the rules, and I keep getting these nebulous.
Like a maximum wage tied directly to your lowest paid employee.
This is what I wanted to say though. Let's say.
Do you hear what I said?
I did.
Maximum wage tied to like there could be a situation where like a maximum wage could be implemented under a socialist structure to ensure that every single workplace has at least a maximum wage that is directly tied to the lowest paid worker and their full-blown compensations and benefits package that they get.
Okay, let's just go back to, so the CEO, he earns more. He has more responsibility. Oh, Hasan, you said
I don't agree with that either. No. I don't agree with CEOs having more responsibility or should earn more, for the record.
What? You just said
no. If you're an owner operator, and you're literally fucking. I was talking to Dan about this earlier before you got here, but it's like the difference between what you do and the difference between, like, let's say a jewelry designer is that a jewelry designer can outsource their fucking labor, but you are the main product here, which is why it's very hard for you to see it.
I'm using a different example.
Yeah. So if you're a fucking jewelry designer and you are responsible for all the beautiful designs in your jewelry that's like super competitive, everybody loves it, everyone wants to buy your fucking jewelry,
right.
You can still hire other people like designers to help benefit that process and make better jewelry.
Workplace, where everybody's altruistic.
Yes,
they vote to say the CEO should make more money than us.
Yes. Well, the way that works would be slowly but surely, as you bring on more people into your company, or as you expand and you grow, in a democratic capacity, you are taking away the earnings that you have right now and eroding it because you're giving it to some people that are coming in because you think that they're valuable enough to be able to be paid that way. But that process is being democratically voted on, and ultimately, you know that you're doing that because you're in your understanding. Later down the line, if you care about this sort of thing, you're going to make even more money. Or rather,
money shouldn't be a motivator.
Money should not be a motivator. You're right.
Why does
in my situation?
Why does
the
CEO care if his company makes more money? He's not going to make more money.
No, it's in the long term, you are creating more stability this way because you understand that every expansion of your productive output, every single piece of expansion on your productive output yields better long-term stability and more money if that's what you're fucking motivated by. But ultimately, that's not the main motivator, and it should not be the main motivator.
I think that's a horrible thing to say if you're considering socialism, that money's a motivator. That's like almost like taboo, I feel like.
No, don't worry about what other people say in this situation or what you think people will perceive from what I'm saying.
Let me go back because
that part is irrelevant.
Okay, so let's say in a world where the CEO makes more money, do you think it's a possible or even likely situation that the heads of these companies who make more money are going to want to influence the government and their workers to vote or support legislation that gives them more money or more influence? Is that a likely outcome?
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Wait, can you ask that again? Sorry, I saw a comment saying you were rectangular, and it fucked my brain up a little bit.
I think that yes, and I think that speaks to what Hasan was saying. I think it speaks to what Hasan was saying earlier about why a lot of Marxists have criticism of social democracy, that lack of elimination of the capitalist profit motive part of the economy,
it doesn't
will
doesn't
naturally
work.
result in what you're saying.
That's my point. So thank you, Dan. In socialism, the money motive doesn't. It's literally it's not compatible. It doesn't work because you're going to have people at the top who are going to want more. They're going to want more influence. They're going to want more power. They're going to want more money, and they're going to exert their influence, their status. Even if they don't make more money, they have status.
Yeah, they're going to be able to
influence.
Socialism is not egalitarian in the sense that there's
you see
like
what I'm saying,
full
Dan,
blown
that there's
equity.
a problem here.
Socialism does not.
Socialism only exists when you remove the money motive, right? Dan?
Socialism, and in the way we understand socialism, yes, the money motive is. We're talking about.
That doesn't seem like something you want to do.
It.
You don't want to remove the money motive
because I'm in the middle ground where I'm talking about like what's
because you're a social democrat.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about.
Sounds like you are.
I'm talking about the realistic short-term period because I don't live in that. I don't live with that. I
agree that if we lived
myself.
But
I know that other people can't do that for the time being.
If we could just teleport into a utopian Star Trek world where money doesn't exist and everybody's equal, yeah, everybody would love that. But let's talk about real shit.
I am talking about real shit.
Well, that's all I'm trying to do too.
Which is why I'm giving you an example of like the interim period of moving towards socialization or a socialist transitional
I
state.
agree with that.
But the problem is when I describe that, you say, well, that's not socialism. I'm like, yeah, I know. Money being a motivator for certain people.
I'm saying once you move to socialism, the system, in my opinion, falls apart. It doesn't work because it falls to the same trappings. Because people are going to want more power. They're going to want more influence. You're going to have capitalistic parties, thank you, Lena, that are going to want to influence. You're going to have these external forces that want that freedom, that want that
there
individualism.
Will always be, even in a democratic organization in the workplace, there will be people that make more, right? That's what you're saying.
I believe the best that we can do is provide laws and regulations that guarantees people a fair, equitable life.
Let me ask you this.
Within those rules, I believe if you're operating within those rules, then you can do and make however much money as you want if you're operating the rules with a super progressive tax rate and everybody's provided for. Because if you want to move to a socialist system, I don't think that system actually works.
So the cultural differences differences that we see in countries that are still capitalist but social democratic versus countries like the United States of America that are hyper individualistic and have like very little social democracy is the argument that I'm making is that with more social amenities and with higher degrees of socialization, people's attitude towards money and money making becomes drastically different. There are different motivators. Yes, status can be an important thing, but that social hierarchy designed around status has nothing to do with the productive output and has nothing to do with like your material reality. It has the capacity to change like the way people perceive you. It's like an attractive person versus like someone who is maybe not as aesthetically pleasing, right? Those things are going to exist. Like there's always going to, socialism doesn't mean like LeBron James has to be the same fucking height as like, you know, like a 5-foot person to play basketball. There's going to be different earners. There's always going to be some level of competition.
Okay.
This is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. This is how you innovate.
If there's different levels of earners, do you agree that seems to be incompatible with Marx's theory of socialism? Because
it's absolutely not. Because all and correct me if I'm wrong, Hasan, because you're more read on this than me, but all that is being said at the end of the day is that people are entitled to the value that they create. If somebody creates more value than somebody else, then they are entitled to more value.
The theory is wonderful.
Yes.
But we're talking about real shit, right? So when people make more, they're going to want to influence. I'm not saying everybody, but again, this goes back to what I was saying last week. There's people who are pathological. Okay.
Yes, there's always bad faith actors.
And even in a socialist country, the sociopaths are probably going to float to the top just because they're willing to do everything that other people aren't, or they care about status and power where other people don't. And so these high-functioning, highly motivated sociopaths are going to want to influence government, and business democracies to increase their power and influence.
Like they do now under a
Yes,
capitalist
like they
system.
do now.
Right.
And that's why I think it's not realistic to expect that not to happen. And I think the most realistic and the best way is in between. Because capitalism...
Can I counter on what you said?
Hold on. Capitalism doesn't work. We know that. And I think socialism doesn't work for the same exact thing. Because people are going to want to... The psychopaths are going to want to move it. And I think the only realistic solution is in the middle, where you just create a sandbox that is good for everybody and operate within that sandbox, because everything else seems like a fantasy to me.
Every single thing that you've mentioned in both of these equations still revolve around human greed, turning humanity and the way people operate into capitalist little demons who are driven by profit. I do believe self-interest is a thing that happens. That's certainly true, which is why you have to have certain restrictions placed upon people that ensure that they don't get out of hand with the level of power that they have. The way I describe it is this. In America, people always say labor unions are corrupt. They're actually really bad. They have a rigid hierarchy, and they are also susceptible to nepotism. This much is true in certain labor unions. So there's been a lot of reform in the Teamsters and the UAW. Shouts out to that. No, what do you mean? Historically, there absolutely has been. I don't
say that about
unions. No, I know you don't say that about unions. My point is this, though. The way I counter that always is this. There's always going to be corruption. There's always going to be, bureaucratic red tape. There's always going to be nepotism. But I would much rather, if corruption is inevitable, I would much rather have a more just and more equitable, a more democratic process that at the very least, by its very design, like in the union structure, offers tangible benefits to the workplace, to the workers, rather than the corruption that we currently experience on a daily basis under the capitalist corruption.
That's the same thing I want.
Okay, which is why I said, but you're not comfortable with socialism with capitalist characteristics.
I also think that socialism, when you consider corruption and high-functioning sociopaths, there's a lot more risk when you centralize the power at the top. Let's say one party for a dictatorship or tyranny.
I actually don't agree with at all. I think that the democratic process in and of itself, whether it's a multi-party system or a single-party system or a two-party system like we have that yields results exclusively, like the material changes that are made are done at the behest of corporations and the wealthy capital owners. No matter what, I think that a more democratic process is always going to be a better and more effective mechanism at fighting against centralized power and sociopaths that want to assume control. I think that if that is an inevitability, no matter what happens, I personally believe that more of a democratic process is going to be more effective. I'll give you an example.
I like democracy
DuPont Chemical. DuPont Chemical, under the capitalist, liberal, bourgeois democracy in the United States of America, was able to dump toxic waste into farmlands and destroy natural water supplies and delicate ecosystems. They still do it to this day. We have PFAS, the forever chemicals, right? That is everywhere. We have microplastics, all that good stuff, right? In a situation where, let's say, DuPont Chemicals was like at least democratically organized, the workers themselves have more power to say, what the fuck are we doing? You're destroying my fucking uncle's farm. You're destroying my backyard.
Right.
And that way they can put a stop to it, or at least demand changes to happen, rather than expect the government to turn around and be like, all right, we're the EPA. We just realized that we are going to...
so you want less government or more government? Because socialism is like all government.
No, that's not true, Ethan. Socialism is simply giving more power to the individual in that regard. You have a government that also
exists. You're telling people you do not have a choice. You cannot run your business this way. You cannot.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a stronger government than we have. That's a really
but I think you want a stronger
government.
Government than we have. You want a stronger government.
I want a stronger government.
You want market regulation.
Yeah, but it's even stronger than the one that I want. That says, here's your workplace. You must exist in it. So you're saying on one hand, the EPA is silly.
Well, the EPA.
But on the other
in
hand,
DuPont, in the situation with DuPont, if you want me to finish this, because this is not hypothetical, this is something that actually happened. EPA said, "Sorry, we're gutted. We don't have like enough researchers." A lot of the researchers that work at EPA also end up getting jobs at DuPont, or vice versa. There's always a revolving door, tit for tat. Regulatory capture is something that these corporations do in an effort to monopolize and also improve their profit margins, as always. So in that structure, the EPA basically delegated DuPont with figuring out how toxic their pollutants were. And of course, until a journalist uncovered this entire thing, they were able to claim that these toxic pollutants weren't as bad, right? So there is no mechanism in that situation where we just,
capitalism.
Yeah, so we just sit there and we expect the government that is, appointing people into positions of power that literally have a material. No, listen. We expect the government to enforce certain regulations and restrictions that they do not, because the people that are placed into that position of power have no interest or need in placing said restrictions, or maybe even lack the know-how.
Maybe people in the company don't want to make less money. So maybe they don't have access to all the data that the CEO
the beautiful
has.
part about that is that, at least historically speaking, what you're describing has never happened. What I mean by that is, when you look at the UAW, for example, it is supposed to be in their best interest to be anti-EV, and yet for some reason, Sean Fain and the UAW's perfectly understanding of a Green New Deal
there's also never been a company that has a purely socialistic hierarchy where they
That's
make
not true.
less.
There's cooperative corporations.
Where they make less.
Like Mondragon is a good example of.
And have they been levied with the task of deciding to make less money to help the environment?
Yes.
When?
Absolutely. Not to help the economy, but they.
My point is that saying one is better than the other is just theory. Well,
we are talking about simply theory.
I think
because we both agree that
EPA
capitalism doesn't work.
I think a strong EPA is great. In fact, I think you'd still need an EPA in a socialist country. I don't think it eliminates the need for the EPA.
Agreed, 100%. Which is what I was saying is, in that socialist formation, there is actual real mechanisms of control that can put a stop to this kind of thing, rather than power accumulating in the hands of the few at the top of the corporate structure that then make these decisions, make these hiring practices to get these people in the revolving door.
In theory, what you're saying is great.
In practice, it would be great as well.
I think in practice it would be great, but I don't think it's possible.
But okay, so now
let's go back to this idea of greed,
first
right?
first you said the theory doesn't work. Now you're saying in practice it won't work.
No, because it's not. And what I mean is that you can't organize it that way. It won't work. And you know what I mean.
But what I mean is that we do see different. You and I are in agreement that higher degrees of socialization is a benefit. Okay, we're in agreement. You like unions. You want workers to have more control. You want workers to have more power, more say. And have more autonomy ultimately. So you and I are absolutely in agreement on that front. So to say that doesn't work in theory, I think betrays.
I'm talking about the workplace specifically.
Well, yeah, in the workplace as well. You're in agreement, no?
That's a huge difference.
We spend 80% of our adult lives in the workplace. This is the most important
and
place
I believe
for
it should be
political
regulated.
organization.
Listen, we seem to have a disagreement about like greed. Like there seems to be this notion that people that live in a capitalist country, we understand greed and desire for wealth differently than an example I always see is like Native Americans. And that's part of why I can't conceive of a true socialistic country.
You're saying that like primitive communism or primitive accumulation, which has been the foundation of like societal development for much longer than the Industrial Revolution or post-industrial revolution capitalism, right?
I've seen a lot of people say that greed is learned. That if you grew up in a pure socialist society,
no, absolutely. Self-interest is a real thing that people have, but people can be taught, and people can learn that the collective aspects of societal development are far more important for self-interest than the individual, the hyper-individualistic, like, I'm going to get mine, fuck everybody else.
So the point of going to this greed discussion is to talk about like human nature, and that I believe that in a perfect socialist society, there'll be forces of influence of wealthy people with status, people with power, wanting it more for themselves.
My argument always
and
is
I
this.
believe that that's
But my argument is-
believe that that's innate.
Yeah. If so, first of all, I don't think that there's a biological imperative. I think that, like I said,
What's the difference?
Self-interest can be.
What's
if you have a
resource hoarding and greed?
Yes. So
how is accumulating lots of money different than resource gathering or accumulation?
I will describe it to you. A society that heightens collectivist understandings, okay, as a consequence of it being directly tied to our, at this point, our means of production and how we understand it, how we generate commodities, is going to have the exact opposite opinion on collectivism versus hyper-individualism in the way that you see it under capitalism. More people will have a collective understanding that, like, we are in this together and that we're working side by side.
Most, not all.
Then yes, you're right. And the reality is that there will still be people who are self-interested, people who will still want to utilize the existing constructs, the existing hierarchies to their immediate advantage at the cost of others. But my point is that if that is an inevitability, which I agree, because there will be people who are sociopathic, criminals, charlatans, the lumpen pros and whatnot, okay? That will always exist. But even if that exists in the and I'm being very realistic about this, wouldn't it be better to have more mechanisms of control in the form of democracy and ensure a world in which everyone has more autonomy in a place where they spend 80% of their lives on?
It would be.
So yeah, then we're in agreement.
There's a rubber band. You know, it's pulling us. The center of gravity is social democracy, capitalism, socialism, and the rubber band's pulling us in both directions towards the center. That's what I believe.
Okay, and my point always is that while marginal incremental reform in social democracies were made when there was actually a counterforce in the form of communists, trade unionists, anarchists, and the like, okay, they have been thoroughly eviscerated both in this country and in Europe as well, which is precisely the reason why you see Europe following the American attitude with its own conditions getting worse and worse year over year.
If you're willing to at least acknowledge that there are going to be innately, just as a product of the human condition, people that are born greedy with a desire to want to hoard resources. I don't know why you're afraid to say greedy. They're hoarding resources. If you're willing to admit that they're going to be bad people, then that's okay for me, because there was some takes I saw that pretended like that.
Don't have a conversation with people on Reddit who also themselves will probably change their ideas. There's people are very rigid, especially under the guise of anonymity online. It's not reflective of the actual conversation that you could be having that's productive.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
But
So let's move on.
I fall into this trap too. I yell at fucking people in my chat all the time because I sometimes lose sight of like sarcasm and I can't get an accurate assessment because I don't know where you're coming from.
Really bad.
Okay.
But I want to continue this.
If you go to pee, I'm fucking everyone's a communist after this. I'm just letting you know.
It's okay. You can have
while you're peeing, I'm just gonna
maybe we should both go so you don't get the advantage.
No, I'm gonna get the advantage.
You don't need to pee? You always pee before me.
No, I'm holding it in. No, I don't need to pee.
There's no shot you don't need to pee.
Yeah.
I'm not taking a pause.
Oh God.
No, do not.
You want me to mute his mic?
That's fucked up. I'm reading the comments.
Nope, I have control.
There you go. I think this has been a relatively productive conversation. I mean, God knows what people will do to pick this apart, because every single time we have conversations, it's very frustrating that like there is a secondary market, like a cottage industry of people who will like pick apart every detail and make these like grand assertions off of it, which is very frustrating because it's like I guess if you're from one of these communities out there, and there's plenty of them, there's so many people that make videos, right?
I mean, hell, we do it. I'm not going to say that the H3 podcast is. I mean, I would say the H3 podcast, we do that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we do that as well. Yes, I do that as well. But like, my question always is like, if you're coming from one of these communities, like, don't you feel like you're duped a little bit by whoever you trusted into believing that there is like genuine discord and division here. Like
talking about you and Ethan, having a falling out,
or even people didn't attack you as much. Surprisingly, it was more so me, even though you and him had a big disagreement as far as
well, nobody gives a shit about me. I mean, come on.
It was odd. I don't know.
Thank you, AB.
Because you have a lot of differing opinions as well, but for some reason you weren't getting criticized as much. It's almost like people are more self-interested in certain directions. But
I think there's definitely an element of that. People definitely have it out for you. And also, I think I saved myself a little bit by being at the beginning. I don't know if you caught how much of that conversation you caught, but I was very reluctant to engage in that conversation. And so, anything that I said was kind of tinged with the fact that like Dan doesn't even really want to be here. So I guess maybe that softened people's anger. I'm sure people did get angry about it, but frankly, I was stressed about it afterwards just because like, I don't know. I don't like being the center of attention. And so I stayed off of social media all weekend. I just didn't look at it. Yeah, Ethan just said they were glazing me up. Well, I'm sure some people were, but
yeah, they were saying Queen Dan, Wan. They were saying Wan.
Yeah. Maybe I'll take this as an opportunity to drop a little bit of knowledge I don't think I've ever actually shared on the show. But
knowledge.
My one side of my family was actually I am descended from a bunch of like hardcore Bolsheviks in the Russian Revolution.
I knew it.
Fuck, dude, that's you. That's right. We were actually trying to draw this out of you, dude. You're fucking done, son.
My last name, Sverdlov, is a bastardization of Sverdlov, who was one of Lenin's like lieutenants in the revolution.
You don't want me to this out? You sure you want this to go out?
I mean,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
We're talking like we're talking like great uncle or something here. It's not really directly connected.
Your family's proletarian violence and his contributions have been noted, man. Yeah. We're czarists here. How dare you?
sorry. I didn't want to piss off the whites.
So I know. I always see this picture and I'm always like, dude, he seems a little too comfortable in that outfit.
But like
he's just filling that uniform.
It was a Halloween costume. It was a Halloween costume. I'm not a weirdo.
Thank you. Red scare.
Yeah.
Red scare.
Red scare.
Okay, so I want to move on to some more practical topics, but before we do that, I want to say that I think this is a great conversation.
I agree.
And anyone that's mad, you're wrong. Anyone who's upset right now about this conversation, you're wrong. This is a good conversation we're having.
People get heated, but I've been keeping an eye on the chat, and I think a lot of people have found this really interesting.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Wrong. The last time was a little jading, but I wasn't going to stop me. But anyway, also I want to emphasize that we agree on so much, like literally 95%.
In the practical application, in the short term, we are in agreement 100% of the way. If you like Bernie Sanders, then you're good with me. That's my opinion, because Americans do not have any class consciousness, and you have to build that. There are certainly differing opinions, like people who believe in accelerationism or whatever, but I truly think that America will only accelerate towards barbarism as it has, and not necessarily socialism, without any kind of without people believing that like they have any kind of autonomy in the workplace, any kind of means of collective bargaining in the workplace.
Okay, so anyway, my point is, if you're angry, you're being silly right now. This is good. This is a good conversation. And on my part, again, I'm pretty, ignorant. So this is good for me to kind of.
I think you undersell yourself. I think you are, more importantly than anyone else. Ignorance is one thing, but you're very curious. And you're charitable when you want to learn things. And I think that is truly important, as opposed to being like, I've made up my mind, this is good. I mean, obviously, there's still hangups.
Yeah.
But that's always going to happen. It's just, this kind of dogma is too powerful. Everyone has their own journey.
The fact that we have like over 30,000 people watching like a really analytical,
kind of nuanced debate about this.
Yeah, socialism and social democracy is pretty.
Yeah, cool. I'm happy to see that. And like Hasan said earlier, I mean, I think there's been a massive sea change in this country in the last decade, largely thanks to Bernie Sanders. But I would even go further back and say like the Occupy stuff and the financial crisis is when it really started to creep into the consciousness. But I can't imagine having this conversation when I was like a teenager. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
Like it would be a non-starter in
Yeah.
this country. And
Well, we're both radical, by the way, as we're saying. By
Yes, you yourself, in the eyes of the broader American
even
public,
now,
I
would be considered radical by
compared
almost
to someone
everybody.
like myself.
Yeah.
Yes, people will go, "Oh, he seems reasonable," which I personally love. I think that that's a fucking great thing.
I don't think
because
they'd
the more
say that. That'd
insane
be good,
I look, the more sane you look. And in the short term, what you're advocating for is unironically a good thing,
Props.
which is why I also
You look crazy for once. I look sane for once.
no, but that's my point. Is that's why I also
We're working in the same.
that's why I also try to engage in movement building in the other direction as well. Whenever there's like, because there's plenty of people who fucking hate me on to the left of me who have like radical, Maoist third worldist opinions or whatever the fuck. But I never give that any kind of light or any kind of attention or dunk on it because I feel like, yeah, they look crazy or whatever. Who gives a shit? Ultimately, if they are working in their own way to erode the power that capital has, then you're good in my book. And that even extends to social democrats to the right of me as well.
So just to summarize my point before we move on, it's essentially this. I believe social democracy can address all the issues that socialism attempts to address and also offers a more realistic and a proposition for an organization of society. That's it. But let's move on.
It is 12:20. I should just point out. I don't know how much we've been going for about 2 hours here.
If you need to bail, that's fine. But I have more questions.
Okay, what do you have? I'm down to keep talking.
Can I just point this out real quick? You sent this a moment ago.
Yeah, my dad got.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Every time.
Every time.
One of my parents.
Yeah, to be fair, Predicatons has gotten me as well in the past.
Yeah, but this was my parents. Every time we do a clickbait title, they go, "Dan left. AB died.
AB's dead.
AB's dead.
What?
Yes.
And in the role of a lifetime, Gary.
All right, let's talk about some like realistic or not realistic. Let's talk about some actual applications of socialism today because I kind of want to understand it. So let's look at China. So I know China's done a lot of good for the massive amount of its populace. They've uplifted them out of poverty. They gave them access to health and housing. And on the whole, the
improved literacy rates.
Yeah, everything across
rapid
the board.
urbanization, rapid development.
Exactly. The quality of life of the average Chinese person is absolutely catastrophically improved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now you tell me when I ask you, is
Seems pretty radical for you to even admit that, in my opinion. But okay.
Well, hold on. I've never denied that.
Okay.
But my question is, is China socialist or not? Because you always say China isn't a socialist country.
I think China, if you ask them, is a transitional socialist state. Do I think that it has certain socialist characteristics?
Who
Absolutely.
would say that in China?
What do you mean?
You said if you ask them.
The CCP,
the government, the CCP.
Oh, okay.
That's like their main thing. Is that this is like
they say we're
socialism
transitional?
with Chinese characteristics. We are a transitional socialist state. Every communist party will always say that they are trying to implement a transitional socialist state. Obviously, that socialism has to be adjusted to the material conditions and the needs that the people have. So socialism can.
Last week, you were telling me China isn't a socialist country. So I was curious what you meant by that.
It's not socialism in the sense that like there is collective ownership over the means of production across the board. It's state ownership that benefits the interests of the citizens, as you've also admitted or recognized.
It's not an admission. I recognize.
Well, it's an admission if you're living in the Western world, because in the Western world,
it's
everybody
undeniable. It's just a fact.
Yeah, but people will use. Here comes the.
I'm not one of those people. I'm not one of those people.
You know
what I mean?
Okay.
So, well, okay.
Do you want,
here's what I'll say
on
about
Taiwan.
Here's what I'll
statements.
Hold on, we'll get to that.
Before we get to okay.
Here's what I'll say about China. China's economy was extremely stagnant for a long time, and even if you compare it to Taiwan, who separated from them in about 1950s. If you compare...
Well, more to that separation, I think.
Sorry?
There's a little bit more to that separation, I think.
Well, we'll get into more depth than that. But my point is, around the 1970s, 1980s is when China's economy started to boom.
Yes.
And the reason for that boom was because they started to open up their economy and lean into more capitalistic notions.
They got an influx of foreign capital.
And,
yes,
and that is when the average quality of life of the average Chinese person was vastly improved.
So here,
and before that, the Chinese economy was extremely stagnant, and the quality of life was not good.
Yeah. So here's how that works, right? There is plenty of trade that occurs with other countries as well that do not have a mandate of trying to do even development, right? Let's not use the word socialism here. Let's just say urbanization, even development, like uplifting. Chinese people will say Chinese prosperity, right? Plenty of other countries that get foreign capital do not necessarily develop in that direction in the same way that China did. The reason why China was able to do so is not necessarily because foreign capital came into the country. It was because of what they did with said foreign capital. If China had developed in a similar structure with, like, you know, Western-backed kleptocrats that control it like an oligarchy in the same way of the democratized market and the dissolution of the USSR did, then China would objectively be in a similar situation to Russia and the Russian economy in general. Russia made all of its, or the USSR made all of its collectivization in that time frame, in a very short time frame, without 400 years of like slavery and all of the many benefits that gave to the Western world, and went from fucking potato farmers to people that beat the United States to the space, to be the first person to go to space. Yuri Gagarin shouts out. Similar structure existed, and similar thing happened in China as well after foreign capital came in. But it wasn't necessarily because foreign capital came in. It was what they did with that foreign capital. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? So in that situation, because money is just money, right? If there was like, I don't know, if we lived in a very different world.
What was the money for? It was for cheap labor.
Yes, absolutely.
And so in a sense, they're serving capitalism. They're taking the money. They're serving capitalism.
The dingus gambit is that
the dingus gambit.
It's just like utilizing the
Deng was the leader that did this.
Oh, that was his name, Dingus?
No,
Deng.
Dingus.
Is that you can take advantage of Western society has this division of power where there's an imbalance there, where capital owners and their capital interests are better represented by their bourgeois government. So they will, if we offer them, cheap manufacturing, and then take their IP and start slowly but surely developing our country through rapid urbanization, like taking all that foreign capital and like building roads, building hospitals, building trains, and whatnot. We will be able to inevitably improve our material conditions as a collective.
In doing so, they've also entrenched themselves in a capitalistic model, I think. And not totally, right? But to an extent. And I think to that extent, it was a great benefit to them to operate in that middle ground. And I'll say this, since that's happened, that's when you started seeing all these Chinese billionaires, which is not a good thing, I'm saying. But
because but it's global capitalism.
That's the inevitability.
It's impossible to escape global capitalism under a global capitalistic structure unless you are forced to exist or operate outside of those boundaries in the form of like Cuba, for example.
Well, we both agree on a realistic approach. So in that sense, we agree that's why I believe social democracy is the way. But,
AB wrote something if you want to read it.
Oh, yeah. We were saying about how the CCP... I didn't see the second part. Since established in 1921, CCP has proclaimed itself to be a Marxist-Leninist party and has consistently referred to its system as socialism with Chinese characteristics. In essence, CCP views itself as overseeing a transitional socialist state working towards the eventual realization of communism. Because communism is a bit different. It's not like when you have like a strong central leader.
No, communism is when after a successful stage of development in a transitional socialist state, where the scarcity problem has been solved, and there is no interest in like capital accumulation, and the state eventually withers away. yielding a borderless, moneyless, stateless society.
It's the Star Trek future you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I'm sure
but not
China's well
entirely
away.
because there's definitely
Critics
still a
often
state
point
in
to the
Star
gap
Trek,
between the party's rhetoric and the realities of it, noting the prominence of capitalistic practices, the wealth gap, and the absence of political freedoms as challenges to their characterization as a transitional socialist state. But isn't that just like, okay, but we kind of agree on that. So let me ask you this. One of the reasons that China is able to govern so effectively, and we agree, they get shit done fast.
Yeah.
And that's how part of, again, how their economic growth was so so quick and strong.
Yeah.
They can act. They don't have to be bogged down by Congress and shit.
Can I cut in here really quickly? That's a dangerous prospect that capitalist countries are also reckoning with, for the record. And under a capitalist country, if they want to continue consistently competing with China, for example, one of the things that the EU did recently was talk about the government-backed subsidies in the form of EVs and how Chinese development is impossible to compete with because they're offering insane subsidies that offer Chinese EVs and is like basically destroying the EV marketplace for European car manufacturers. So they want to create an investigative team and stop that from happening somehow, or possibly even implement tariffs.
By the way,
that in and of itself makes the Chinese centralized planning structure significantly better than capitalist ones in the form of global trade. That will create, in my opinion, a very scary future for Western liberal democracies, where how do you implement that kind of central planning, which already exists, but how do you make it worse? Fascism.
Okay.
And that's what I'm genuinely afraid of.
Well, I mean,
barbarism.
China's not that far off from it in its current state.
What do you mean?
With like, I mean, they have basically a all-powerful leader. Everything's owned by the government. The only difference is they're not at war, basically. That's the only missing factor. But they are building their military.
Yeah.
And threatening countries like Taiwan. They're pretty close to fascism right now, I would say.
They're building their military.
Government rules culture.
But what they've done with
business.
that military is very different than what the American military is.
Okay,
doing.
whatever.
They don't have 800
they have a
bases.
large military and they're threatening.
It's always a
people with
hypothetical.
it.
And
I'm
it's
just
the same
saying,
with,
China's not that far from fascism.
It's the same with.
It's like
if
right
China's
there.
not that far from fascism. America is literally 10x the Nazi Germany fascism. Though
I disagree.
You have to admit.
China's closer. Because they have they have
you
the
said
one.
They built a military, but they haven't even
That's
fucking
not the only
used
thing
it.
I said. They have a government control of business, manufacturing, of social life, of the press. Okay. They have one strong
These are
leader.
authoritarian. Yes, these are authoritarian constructs for sure.
And then,
but fascism
the only thing
has
missing from that is basically they have strong nationalism.
I agree with that.
And they have and the only difference basically now to go full fascist is if they were invading countries, which they're threatening to do right now.
So on that same metric, you realize that the only difference in America is the simple feeling that you are free and that you have all manner of different freedoms. Whereas
we have freedom. We do have freedoms of expression.
We have freedom to say,
we have freedom of
I agree.
Religion. We have freedom of assembly. Those are big deals.
But
I know you don't think you don't want to.
No.
Those
This
are
is a huge
those are
deal.
Big deals.
Of course, it's a.
Okay,
of course,
sorry.
it's something
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, of course, it's
I'll
something
take
I
that
willingly
back.
recognize.
Yeah,
Which
I'll
is why I
take that
say,
back.
like, I'm not living in fucking China right now. It's not like there's.
I don't
It's not
think
like they're
it's
on tier one
fair
cities.
to say, well, America is.
Yeah.
And I'm not being an American simp. I'm just saying that.
The
you
idea
brought
that
up
like
American fascism, like China fascism is better than
okay.
American
Here's the difference, because fascism, fascism is supposed to be a means of control with a oftentimes capitalist understanding of the economy and effectively to organize the economy and continue organizing the economy.
Capitalism doesn't have a lot to do with fascism, I don't think.
Capitalism has everything to do with fascism.
I mean,
capitalism.
You're striking on one of the biggest political philosophy debates of the 20th century.
Fascism is restoring order by
I don't
whipping the fucking masses.
A lot of people define fascism as capitalism in crisis.
Yes.
So I think about it more about like, maybe it's like capitalism gone fucking totally off the rails. Maybe, yeah. Because it's just
fascism.
no ethical.
If fascism
they have
had
no
nothing to do
ethical
with
hang-ups.
capitalism, then all of these supposedly
But
populist
they're
leaders
getting
like
money
Hitler
to
and
do war.
Mussolini,
I mean,
who
that's
started off as like supposedly quote unquote socialists, or even like interested in higher levels of socialization, would not have worked alongside capital owners and destroyed trade unions and communists in general. Those were the first people that they fucking butchered.
Okay, fine. I don't care about capitalism. I mean, I'm a social democrat. So, or in terms of like how fashion, I just saying,
if
I
we're
don't
gonna
think
talk about social democrats in Germany. There's
I don't
also
think-
contention there, but
I don't think Chinese fascism is better or worse than
Chinese
American
fascism?
fascism. What? Why is that funny?
because I don't think that I do not think that China is fascist. I think that they are
Closer.
authoritarian.
Close.
I don't think China is closer to fascism than America.
I mean, not
because
yeah,
because the
fascism isn't the only
hypothetical, because the most
authoritarianism,
significant
right?
part,
But like
the most significant part that you're mentioning is like, oh, they're building their military and they don't have freedom
They
of
own the
assembly or
press.
freedom of speech. Well,
they control the culture.
yes, this part
They own
part is
all
correct.
The manufacturing.
Nationalism is the best part that you can actually identify
nationalistic.
in the problems with China. You can absolutely push that.
I don't see where
push
I'm
that
missing.
part where it is nationalistic. Okay, however, the Chinese development and Chinese military action is either irredentist in nature, which is different than imperialism, where it's like it's more so expansive in its own limited area, rather than global imperialism, which is
China's
done with the
always taking
express
more
effort
land.
with the
Tibet, Taiwan. They're always
okay.
expanding.
Well, if
Now,
we're going to
the
talk about
fact- the
Tibet,
fact that
if we're going to
you-
talk about Tibet
the
and
fact that
Taiwan,
you think it's
want me
like okay because it's their territory seems.
do you
a
want me
little
to?
bit
Do you
silly.
want? No. Do you want me to describe it?
I don't want to get into the Taiwan thing because
Well,
I don't
you
want to
can't
get
just say
to.
Tibet and Taiwan and then not expect me to explain the nuances.
I'm not ready for this tangent.
Because okay, Ethan, but like
Go
Tibet
ahead.
Tibet was literally a fucking feudal slave mandate, like
So
autonomous
so
zone.
China did them a favor.
That was one. I mean, in America, when I say something like this, people get very upset. You know, we talk about the Dalai Lama saying "suck my tongue" or whatever, but like that's not far from the norm in fucking normal Tibetan existence before the Communist Party came in and
So
took over.
China unilaterally took over Tibet,
Like
squelched
these are
their culture. They basically are trying to, homogenize the culture.
if your culture.
They're trying to squelch the religion and the identity.
The part of
and they did them
feudal
a favor.
warlords and slavery, abolishing that. Yes, I do think that is good.
No, China did them a favor.
I think that yes, I
was a
will be on the record
just
to
like
state
America did it.
that
Nah, I'm
while
not
the
gonna say
Chinese
that.
government
I'm not going to say it.
well, there is no equivalent in American intervention that you can point to in a similar capacity, unless you're talking about.
Okay, so
and I think this is a good way to describe Taiwan as well. The American federal government going into the fucking South and killing, unfortunately, not all of them, but a decent amount of slavers and defenders of slavery. This is violent retribution from a powerful federal government
Tibet was a separatist.
that squashed. Okay.
Tibet is the South in the Civil War.
Yes. Tibet in the time frame where Chinese intervention happened would be the South. Yes,
So
they
what
were
was
doing
the,
slavery.
What was the
they were
moral
feudal.
aspect of the war of China?
The interests are obviously like national security or whatever the fuck they claim, but ultimately the reality was that beyond the material benefits, that yes, they were a feudal, oppressive, slavery-backed state, autonomous region.
Mm-hmm.
So
just like Russia's denazifying Ukraine.
No, I don't agree with that. For the record, I don't think that Russia is denazifying Ukraine. If anything, they will end up nazifying Ukraine in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to point to a modern country that you could probably fairly characterize as fascist, I would point to Russia before I
agree,
to China.
100%. I think that Russia is a significantly better example of a fascist nation state, given its modern Russia, contemporary Russia, being a capitalist nation state built by oligarchs that were anti-Soviet and anti-communist that made deals with Western bankers and Westerners originally leading up to the dissolution of the USSR so they could literally pick apart the entire country, Vladimir Putin being another primary example of this.
Okay, good. They're fascists.
I would agree that Russia's interests are significantly more fascist than the outcomes are because their interests do not lie around improving their productive forces or the abolition of like what Russia's doing in Ukraine is no different than what America has done in Iraq. Like, oh, we're bringing democracy. Like, they're not denazifying Ukraine. It's fucking bullshit. Whereas I will not say the same thing about like Tibet. Like,
no, I'm not saying
I think it would be a disservice. I think it'd be a disservice to Ukraine to make a comparison between like modern Ukraine and feudal Tibet.
You can create a pretense to take anything you want, you know.
Yeah, but there are also. But you agree, like for example, the federal government in the Civil War did the right thing, right? It was very violent, but they did the right thing.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's talk about Taiwan then, because Taiwan in its formation is created by the KMT or KMT General Chiang Kai-shek. I'm butchering his name.
I think that was close,
but I think it's the closest I can get to that. And in its formation, it was a military dictatorship that was fascist, openly nationalist, and there was no surprise there that the American government was backing them, right? In its entire inception. Taiwan now is very different than that.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it.
But this is very important in the context of like talking about Taiwan.
So should they be invaded for how they were
Absolutely
founded?
not.
Right.
Absolutely not. Because hey, guess what?
Everybody was
when America builds you up to be a nation as a counterbalance or as the real China, as we did originally. That's why we were in support of Taiwan, because they were nationalist, fascist, military dictatorship that was brutal, comprised of dudes that got owned by fucking Mao overall, right?
But
at a time when, and at a time when, 100%. At a time, and they were butthurt losers that believed that like Mongolia is also a part of Republic of China. They have more expansive desires, more expansive territorial desires than
Mongolia.
Than that. Well, they can't do anything.
Well,
their military, according to American generals' assessments, was fucking dog shit.
I think Taiwan's a better example then.
So Taiwan.
But wait, I'm not ready.
But Taiwan in its inception.
This tangent is out of control.
Wait, but like you want me to?
We'll go back to it.
These things don't happen overnight. If you assume that it's like a war between good and bad, or that it happened overnight, it materialized out of nothing, then yes, that is infinitely more susceptible to Western framing, to be like, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, they want to do this thing, and then you make comparisons to like reasonable wars or whatever, and then all of a sudden we are not factoring in the understandable, whether I agree with it or not, doesn't matter, the understandable desires of national security from the Chinese nation state that is in an openly contentious yet still very favorable trade relationship with the Western world. Why the fuck would they want a American military base in a nation state that was developed by America, originally a fascist, nationalistic, brutal military dictatorship? Why would they want that to be an American base 1 mile off their fucking coastline?
Okay, you're right.
So that is precisely the reason. So that's precisely the reason why the people of Taiwan who recognize that reality, while they yearn for independence, they recognize that reality that it will never happen as long as China has a military or a powerful economy, and as long as America has a legitimate interest in Taiwan being an American base of support to inevitably control China, dominate China in some ways.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back, because we did like the monster tangent here.
Okay.
I was saying one of the reasons China's so effective is because of their one-party state. Without opposition, they're able to move fast and effectively. So do you think this is a good model? Do you think the one-party state is a good model? Because the outcome of that one-party state is also massive human rights violations across the board.
I mean, I don't think that... I think that America is a one-party state.
I don't care about America.
No, but it's important to understand, because like the one-party state is an inevitability under any kind of formation of the government. The government is going to yield results that are either positive for the people or negative for the people.
Even if it's marginal, there is still a difference. Even if it's marginal, there's still a difference. For example, abortion, which I consider a human right. It's marginal.
I agree with you on that. I think that it
but I don't want to talk about America. I want to talk about China.
Well, the reason why we're talking about America is to put it into a framework that is understandable. Like, that's the only reason why I always bring up. People always say, Hasan, your only assessment on the situation is America bad. It's significantly more nuanced than that. The reason why I always go back to America is to help Americans or Westerners understand Chinese governance and
I
how
understand
it's
what you're
not all that
saying.
different.
You say they don't just pretend to have two parties.
Yeah.
Now, I disagree with that. I don't think it's like super, super wrong. I think there are marginal differences in the parties. And I do think there's space potentially, although it's super unlikely. It's happened in American history for a third party. It's probably never going to happen again, but it has happened before.
Yeah, the Civil War.
And so, but like the consequence of
the greatest material differences. Okay, but the greatest material differences were ever represented in American history was during the Civil War.
I take back the
Okay. The greatest material differences, like genuine material differences in the form of how to produce cheap commodities like cotton, okay? Well, in the northern states, they backed the abolition of slavery. Southern states didn't. That was a major point of contention. That was probably one of the last times where there was like a real and significant difference in an agreement, I guess, a difference in opinion that led to a very violent conquest of the South that wanted to secede and was forced to not.
The one-party system in China does result in a lot of human rights violations. Does the ends justify the means in that case?
I don't think so.
Control.
I don't think it does.
Okay.
I think that in Cuba, which also has certain restrictions on civil liberties, for example, there is a better argument to be made that the ends justify the means in Cuba, because Cuba is an island that has been under embargo, and since its inception, since the Cuban Revolution, after we backed Batista and wanted to ensure that Cuba was still a tourism destination and sugar plantations with slavery, and then lost, we immediately said, okay, fuck this shit. Cuba, we are going to do everything in our power to stop you from developing. In that situation, because it's a tiny island nation that is in the ass cheeks of the largest imperialist superpower on the planet, it's understandable to have certain restrictions on civil liberties, and by the way, ironically, Cuba is like way better on abortion, gay rights and whatnot, which we can get into if you want.
No.
But that's a consequence of direct democracy, even though Cuba is a one-party state as well.
Okay.
Like,
I mean, there's plenty of I know plenty of I'm not super familiar with the politics, so I don't even want to speak on it necessarily, just because I don't know a lot. I do know that a lot of Cubans that I've met fucking hate the Cuban government.
Yeah, because they're in America.
They're not like rich. They're like
no, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so they're
like they don't have to be rich. But they're in America, which means
admittedly, I don't know.
Like they had a disagreement in the lightest terms. They either were forced to run away, or literally had, in the lightest terms, a disagreement with the Cuban government. So of course they are not going to be fond of the current Cuban government.
Isn't there? When you're looking at a country like China, who's able to act so efficiently, and if you're looking for some democratization or like some equality of outcome in terms of income for the lowest people, seems like a potential and almost like inevitable outcome is some of the stuff that you see in China, like one cultural identity, one religion or non-religion, like this need to be homogenous so that people are compliant and they live that way.
This is state development 101. Every nation state does some form of this.
The reason that has happened in China is why all these mass human rights violations are able to exist. Like re-educating people, mass detention for people who are religious. You know what I mean? Forced labor camps. And I know you deny that they are organ harvesting, but I do believe that they do that, or did do that. Maybe they stopped.
Organ harvesting did happen in China.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is like Falun Gong propaganda, which is that they have there's two different types. What we're talking about is like, were there criminal components and certainly
it was state-sponsored organ.
No, I don't know. If it was state-sponsored organ harvesting,
evidence suggests that it was.
The state actually, watch out. She's right behind you. It's okay. If it was state-sponsored, the state would not have cracked down on it inevitably.
Well,
they did.
They realized how bad it looks. It was the evidence that I've seen.
But if they're authoritarian, why would they
involved.
care about how bad it looks? You said that they have labor camps.
China doesn't care about appearance.
Well,
they do too.
But if they're authoritarian, why would they care? Well, I mean, they have labor camps, you said, which is, by the way, ironic because America still has a much higher prisoner density than any other nation on the planet, and slavery is not abolished in America.
We can criticize America all we want, man.
Well, my point is, yes, it's wrong in China as well, but of course it's wrong in China as well.
Okay, forget about that. I mean, like, what about, for example?
Now you're doing whataboutism, by the way.
No, I'm not. I'm gonna tell you why. I'm specifically. Let's use this example because it's the best one. The Uyghur. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say their name. Detention camps where they re-educated and eliminated their cultural identity and religion, and also, frankly. It's almost impossible to do that and not like think of them as others, where they also, are under horrible
mass surveillance, even including like certain representatives living with people and families. Like some of this is like people will say, "Oh, this is Adrian Zen's propaganda," and some of it is very real, 100%.
Don't you think it's Chinese propaganda to be like it wasn't as bad?
I'm not saying it wasn't as bad.
Okay, good, because I thought maybe you said that.
But hold on, no, I think that my analysis on the matter is fairly nuanced, but still incredibly critical of the Chinese state. I have never said that mass surveillance, mass imprisonment, even execution in certain instances, and China's development,
this is the outcome of their homogenous socialist society.
The reason that the Chinese nation state claims they did this, and Xi Jinping famously I forget when he said this was a while back, but basically said something along the lines of like, we learned how to deal with Islamic terror from the American nation state.
Okay.
And that is why we had to deal with the Uyghurs. I don't agree with what they did. I think that it's fucking bullshit.
Do you think it's necessary to maintain their socialist homogeny?
It's not a socialist homogeny. Now we're talking about cultural homogeny, right? That's what you're saying.
Right, but it's all, yeah, but it's connected in my mind.
The separatist movement within Xinjiang and some of the aspects of that did include, knife attacks and the like. They don't have a lot of guns in China, luckily. The criminal component of that should have been dealt with on an individual basis rather than dragnets and collective punishment for the entirety of Xinjiang, which is what China did. And re-education camps and mass surveillance, which exists still to this day. Xinjiang, or any kind of separatist movement in Xinjiang, has now been absolutely squashed, destroyed, eviscerated, and not only have they done that, but also on top of that, they've basically softened, like you said, or I guess the term that Westerners will use is Hanified Xinjiang, and have now use their like. Their cultural output as like an export, even like you could just go to Xinjiang and see how wonderful everything is, that kind of thing. You found it. God damn, that's so funny. Mr. Xi urged the party to emulate aspects of America's war on terror after the September 11th attacks from documents leaked in 2019.
Just to frame this for people that aren't familiar with the history, the crackdowns over there were a result of a rise in terrorism in that region. There were bombings and stuff going on. And so all of those camps and the re-education, all of that was a response. It was essentially a crackdown.
But it was a completely, for the record, completely unjustifiable, way over the top, fucking dragnet. Yes,
right, exactly.
Yeah,
or what the United States did in Afghanistan after September 11th. I mean, we rocked that country for 20 years as a result of a terrorist attack.
I'm defending America or something.
That's really funny. You should say that, because that is the automatic position of people in the West, though, is that like whenever I make a comparison to America, like if I compare Russia to America, people think I'm doing that to defend Russia. And it's like, no, that is the worst comparison I can make for a country's actions, because my opinion on the American superpower is that it is incredibly bloody and incredibly unjust. But the reason why people immediately go and say, what the fuck? Why are you bringing up America in this situation? Is because they inherently, without recognizing it, will defend American foreign policy because they are under the understanding.
I agree. Most people would do that.
Yeah.
But so my question is: do you believe that this cultural homogeny is required in a socialist or communist society?
Yes, I think that some form of positive social cohesion needs to occur if you are going to build a nation state. And this happens in public education. I think that public education is very valuable, and I'm 100% in agreement. If it's being done in a more positive way through public education, then it's great.
Right, but
if
not like erasing
negative,
their ethnic identity.
Yeah, if they're doing it in a negative way in that situation where like education
What's a positive
moves
way?
to re-education, a positive component would be something that we unfortunately do not have in America either. Would be to have regions that still have their own ethnic identities preserved through their own board of education and are allowed to exist. This is a major problem with the USSR as well. This happened in the USSR where there was a Russification of all the nation states that were under the banner of the USSR, which ended up creating a fuck ton of division, and also like suppression of religious freedom. Religion is something that is so personal and so important for human beings
Marx's
and their
theory,
identity.
Isn't Marx's theory around like we have to get rid of a religion? That's
no. I mean,
communism?
no, and also I don't even care what Marx's own personal perspective on religion is ultimately, because I'm looking at real implementations of socialism throughout historical materialist socialist nation states.
So you don't believe
and I'm saying that that's bad and wrong. It is demonstrably bad. It was bad in Afghanistan. It was bad in the USSR, and it's certainly bad when China does the same exact shit.
So you're saying yes, it's required, but nothing different than what you see in countries today. That's considered good. By
yes,
people.
Allowing people to have
a national identity,
allowing people to have a national identity while simultaneously reinforcing their ethnic differences or their diversity of culture is absolutely a necessity for nation state development if you want this nation state to succeed. And I'm giving an example of why it didn't work in the USSR.
By the way, I would urge you to look more into the organ harvesting thing, because I do believe that did happen by the state. They were harvesting the Muslims' organs, man. Like the wait time on the
You're saying in modern China?
No, not in modern China. I don't think. Well, it was modern China. It wasn't that long ago, but I don't think they're doing it.
You're saying the state was harvesting the organs of Muslims?
Yeah, who were in that detention camp to give to their citizens. The wait time for organ here. Listen to this. One of the most cited pieces of evidence is the rapid growth of China's organ transplant industry in the early 2000s, with much shorter waiting time for organs than other countries. Chinese government has attributed this to the use of organs from executed prisoners, but the critics argue that those numbers do not match up. The prisoners of conscience, so
crackdowns literally came.
I'm sorry, if it was in the early 2000s, it would have been before the crackdown on the Uyghurs.
I don't know. When did that
So it sounds like it was just the general prison population.
There was a criminal component. I'm not saying that organ harvesting did not happen. Organ harvesting certainly happened. There was a black market for organs, 100%, not just for Chinese citizens, mind you. That is like literally massaging the narrative to fit the Uyghurs being harvested for organs.
I like
because
it. Respect.
Well, that's Uyghur is how you're.
They're Turkish.
Funny about
so
this?
yeah,
they're fucking Turkic.
Yeah.
Like it's called East Turkestan. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's not like the other side of my family. My mother's side is literally their last name is Uyghur. So this is not like random individuals that I have no affinity towards. That I'm saying like the Chinese nation state should oppressively fucking crush
I'm just
them.
saying.
It's always additionally funny when some fucking dumb fuck from Iowa is trying to tell me about fucking Muslim oppression. Why don't you care about Muslim oppression in Xinjiang? It's like, what the fuck are you saying? Anyway, sorry, I get very heated about this because like people are so merciless. Just like people are merciless with you when they say you're a fucking tyrant or you're a capitalist pig dog or whatever the fuck. People are infinitely more merciless when you deviate from the foreign policy norms that have been mandated by Americans through our mainstream media.
Okay, so in short, I think I got my answer on that, which is, the China Tribunal. Okay, whatever. I want to move on to Taiwan. So last time
I just want to point out it's 1:00. We're pretty far over already.
To the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's fine. We can. I think this is very valuable and very good. So I'm perfectly fine talking about this.
Okay, great. Love that. So last time we were talking about Taiwan, you had mentioned one country, two systems. What did you mean by that? Because I didn't know anything about that when you said it, but I've read about it now.
So since the Nixon era of normalizing relations with China, America's understanding of China has been that it is one over-encompassing nation, and that Taiwan, which certainly does want an independence movement or has a robust independence movement, is simply Chinese Taipei. The American understanding and the global understanding is the same, that there is a different autonomous organization inside of Taiwan, an autonomous government inside of Taiwan, but it's still under the Chinese umbrella. My opinion on the matter does not deviate away from the American foreign policy on the matter. And the reason for that is because it also does not deviate away from the collective Taiwanese understanding on the matter, which is that if there's two different forces here at play. Taiwan independence is not something that even Anthony Blinken or the American state backs. Why? Because it would be incredibly disruptive to our largest trade partner. Great. The people of Taiwan want independence in the future, possibly in the future.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why they take that position, well, if you were to ask them without any sort of Chinese influence, like without any sort of like mainland China influence, would you want independence tomorrow? They would say, yes, that is the majority opinion.
Well, what they say is that we already have the independence.
They say
China has no influence over Taiwanese economy or government. And
yes,
they don't touch it.
And yet, from a global perspective, they are still considered to be Chinese Taipei.
Right, because people doesn't want to rock the boat.
Exactly.
But the Taiwanese people
and that is my perspective as well.
That we are already independent. So, but you believe that this is China's statement, one country, two systems.
So then there's no additional need for state intervention from Western forces then?
Well, but China is
China is what?
It is being provocative.
What are they doing?
Towards the Taiwanese.
What are they doing that you would consider to be provocative towards the Taiwanese?
I mean, they have military stationed around. They're doing war games and shit like that.
You know where Taiwan is in proximity to mainland China, right? It's 1 mile off their coastline. Okay, so whenever people say China is
obvious though,
China is violating their airspace.
We know China says it. The government even says it, that we're gonna fucking take Taiwan if y'all don't play ball.
Yes,
so we don't need to pretend like they're not doing
China, no matter if I agree with this or not, right? Because I want autonomy for the people of Taiwan. I want them to do whatever the fuck they want, self-governance, right? So I understand that. And I also simultaneously understand, one, the history of the Taiwanese nation state being propped up and why it was propped up. And more importantly than that, I understand that the Chinese government, which is a different government than ours, right? They are human beings over there that have their own concerns, is not going to want a fucking American military base 1 mile off of their coastline. That is a perfectly reasonable thing to never want. And given the historical reasons as to how Taiwan has been created as a separate nation state with its own expansionist interest in the Republic of China, the entire mainland China, including Mongolia, that's like its founding mandate, that it is understandable for China to not want that to happen, which is why they constantly counter American saber rattling with their own version of saber rattling. This does not mean that the Chinese state is nice. This does not mean that the Chinese state is genuine or wants to implement communism in Taiwan. What?
30 U.S. troops are stationed in Taiwan.
There's no way you think that is the only material
I don't know what you
America
read.
is offering Taiwan.
30 U.S.
Taiwan's
troops.
entire standing army would not exist without U.S. support since its inception.
Okay, but America. You say America has a military base there as one of the, and that would be a good reason, But I don't.
I'm saying I don't want it to turn. I do not want further conflict. The people of Taiwan do not want further conflict, which is why the overarching assessment is like, we're independent. We want to maintain independence. We want to be fully independent, but we don't want to rock the boat.
But it seems like if China was to just invade Taiwan and like, look, we're over it.
It would be devastating. It would be awful for Taiwan. It would be awful for China. It would be horrifyingly bad. It would be disastrous. We are in agreement right there, right?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Okay, so we both want no further bloodshed to happen. And that's what the people of Taiwan also say they want as well.
You also kind of see where China's coming from.
I absolutely understand why China would feel like this is a major issue with their national security concerns. The example I will give you is this. Let's say, just like England and France tried to do during the Civil War because they had material interest in the cotton trade continuing with chattel slavery. Let's say they offered material support to the southern states that wanted to secede, right, in order to continue slavery, okay? And they were actually successful to a certain degree because third parties like Imperial Japan were also invading mainland America, okay? In this process. So the Civil War ended in a way where chattel slavery continued in the South, and every abolitionist was executed, and they called it, instead of white terror, let's say they called it black terror, okay? They executed mercilessly and ruthlessly any abolitionist that lived in the South. And then, after years and years of this fascist white supremacist implementation, hyper-nationalist implementation, the southern states that had successfully seceded, okay, kept building a robust military apparatus through surplus military supplies and weapon systems that other countries that were foreign adversaries to the United States of America started giving them even more and more of this, and then and also said the real America is the South America. Southern states are the real America, and they will one day take over the rest of America.
You're saying,
and that they will inevitably take over the rest of America, and that's going to be the real America. We're going to help them do that. And then
you're saying Taiwan is comparable to the South seceding.
Taiwan in its inception is identical to the South.
How long after the South seceded did the war begin?
What do you mean?
How long between the South seceding and the Civil War happening?
I mean, there was a period. There was a period of time. No. There was a period of time leading up to that where there were abolitionist movements that happened. That's why people say that John Brown's execution.
But Taiwan was independent
like a pivotal point.
I mean, they've been separate for a long time now.
Yeah, no, I understand. Which is why I'm saying, imagine if the South was able to successfully secede. Yeah. Right. And
America wanted to take it back. Northern America wanted to.
No, Northern America is we're worried about our own shit. We can't fucking deal with South America right now, right? Like Northern America, the Federation, let's say, okay, is now working on improving their own productive forces, doing trade deals and whatnot with the rest of the world, and they start rapidly urbanizing, rapidly developing, okay? And, the New Deal only happens there or whatever the fuck. Meanwhile, the southern states are entirely propped up by a foreign adversary, okay, that is infinitely more powerful than Northern America. And they keep saying, we're going to take over the entirety of America. It's one America, okay? And
okay,
because the northern states are able to improve their conditions, have favorable trade deals with the rest of the planet, they inevitably get to a point where they want to maintain their hegemony, they want to maintain their security, their national security. Do you think it would be appropriate to rock the boat, per se, and allow the South to continue developing and continue having a massive military, and inevitably, you send envoys like Nancy Pelosi to Southern American states to fucking say, hey, look, they're democratic now. Sure, they were designed around slavery, but they have a democracy now, and I think that it's okay and appropriate to fucking keep building their military, make it as robust as possible.
The South seceded just because we were talking about it. It was 3 months between the war and the.
But leading up, the build up to that was significantly longer.
Yeah. Okay, so I understand your position on Taiwan. I get all that. From a. But I don't. The one country, two system thing is silly though, because.
But living in California, you personally understand it, right? Living in a blue state, you understand why that would be genuinely you would understand how blue states in America would have security concerns if southern states had seceded successfully.
I already agree.
And kept saying no, the rest of America is ours. Mm-hmm. After they fucking lost too.
Well, I mean, this was 70 years ago that Taiwan
Taiwan now is not a fucking fascist nationalist military state.
I don't think that how it was founded matters at all.
70 years is not significant in development.
That's my point.
No, it's. What do you mean?
I don't think that you should be oh yeah, Taiwan was a bunch of losers that went and started their own country, and so they're not entitled to national. to a national identity. I don't think that matters.
70 years is a blip in time in as far as talking about a fucking empire or a history that spans over
I don't care, but that doesn't matter, right? We're talking about human beings.
Yeah, and now they are democratic, which is great, and I understand their want in autonomy and not being under some form of crushing civil liberties that the Chinese state will bring.
The one country, two systems isn't real. That's not a real thing.
What do you mean?
It's not a real thing. It's one country, one system. Like at Hong Kong, that's what they want to do. They say Taiwan, we'll do the one country, two systems, but that's propaganda.
No, but that's the American policy, which they did with China. They have America said that they would not support an independent Taiwan, and that Taiwan is a part of China. But internally, Taiwan still has autonomy, which is what is currently happening. And the Chinese state sees it as a autonomous region that is still under the Chinese banner that ends up getting military support from Western forces.
Let's talk about Ukraine, and then that's my final one.
Okay.
So we were talking about Ukraine, and your position was that the support for Ukraine is 100% manufactured.
No.
That's what you said last time.
No, I think that all matter of American foreign policy is greatly influenced by manufactured consent because of our interest in, doing whatever the fuck we want to do there, whether it be like bringing Ukraine into the Western sphere of influence or it's not genuine because they want like genuine emancipation for Ukrainians.
So last time you guys compared it, you said, well, nobody gives a fuck about Georgia when that got invaded. Therefore, the fact that anyone cares about Ukraine feels like manufactured.
It's not even just Georgia.
But you guys know but you guys realize there's like a massive. I didn't know anything about the Georgian War. I learned about it. There's a huge difference. You guys understand?
Well, I mean, the scale
it was a 5-day war.
Yeah, it was 5
They
days.
expected Ukraine to drop in 5 days, and if it did, we probably wouldn't be talking about it. Because
that's true. That's true.
So, like, what happened was Ukraine mounted this miraculous defense, and they've got Russia, a fascist country, on the back foot. And we all like when fascism.
I don't think Russia is on the back foot. I think it's just like extending the harm. And only furthering
we
conflict.
Inflicted so much, and I stand with the Ukrainian people because I think Ukraine is a force for good in the world. They're on.
Can I just stop you for a second? Because you said 100% manufacturer consent. Like
that's what you said.
Nothing is genuine. I said 100% manufacturing consent is a leading role in this.
If you want to amend
and the reason why the reason why I take issue with this is because it's like stating like I don't give a fuck about Ukraine. Of course I give a fuck about people in Ukraine. I want the war and the bloodshed, the unnecessary bloodshed to end. Okay. My assessment on the situation might deviate from NATO bloodthirsty NATO defenders or whatever the fuck.
You feel like we shouldn't even be doing anything in Ukraine?
No, I don't.
Nothing.
No, I don't. I think
you don't think so.
I think that of course there's a necessary intervention that must happen. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, I've fucking raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Ukrainian refugees. Like, I'm sorry, this is such a silly fucking thing that not from you, but I hear so much from dipshits online who just want to fucking cut propaganda.
So you can say exactly
suck my
what you mean.
dick. You know?
So you do believe that America's actions in Ukraine are the right ones?
I think that America's actions to a certain degree in Ukraine is understandable. It's reasonable, certainly what the Ukrainian people want, but I think America's interest in Ukraine is not genuine. It's not genuine emancipation. It's more so a continuation of the bloodshed, which is demonstrated not by me, but by American politicians like Chris Murphy, who have openly said on the record that for 5% of our military budget, we've been able to cripple a foreign adversary's military budget without a single American service member dying in the process. I would say that is profoundly successful. What are we doing in Ukraine? We're sending our refurbished old weapons and weapon systems to Ukraine. We have to replenish those weapon systems. It's a never-ending cycle.
Because the reason I ask is because there seems to be somewhat of a sentiment in the left circles or social. I don't know how to even describe it now. I don't know. but that the proxy war people say in Ukraine is unjustified.
It is a proxy war.
No, I know, but they're saying we shouldn't be supporting Ukraine and the whole thing.
Yeah,
Russia should just take Ukraine. And
no, I can't speak for other. I can't speak for other leftists. I don't know what the fuck they say, but plenty of those people also despise me and say that I'm like not pushing Z or whatever. So it doesn't fucking matter.
I thought I heard Richard Wolff have some kind of thing like that.
I can't speak on Richard Wolff either. There's disagreements that I have with Richard Wolff. He had
so you're down with what's happening. Down with what's
I'm not down with what's happening in Ukraine because I want the bloodshed to end, and the only way to do that is by bringing China to the table, bringing America to the table. The real actors here.
You think Ukraine should make some secessions to Russia?
I think the original 6-point plan that was a continuation of the Minsk Accords that were tried twice and failed twice would be a far preferable situation than like endless bloodshed over, inches of territory where, people are being fucking slaughtered endlessly.
Think the Ukrainians would describe it as inches of territory.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, you're saying they're fighting over inches of territory.
He's just saying in the context of how stagnated the war has become. Like the back and forth is pretty much ground to a halt at this point, and
this is what I mean. It's like a very cynical interpretation of what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
It is inches of territory physically when we speak about it.
But I think Ukrainian people get angry when they hear you talk about it because they.
That's understandable. I mean, I get it.
Like
they want full-throated support. They want and expect full-throated support, right? Like
they understandably want that. And they want more than that. They also wanted Article 5. They wanted full NATO protections and NATO nations.
They don't like that you say that they should secede territory to a fascist invader.
It's not even secession of territory. It's like prior agreements that neither party has held on to. The real Ukrainian criticism in this situation comes from people who say, well, Hasan, how can you say that when Russia has not held on to their obligations? And that is true. Russia has not held on to their side of the bargain on the Minsk Accords, but neither has Ukraine. And my point is, ensuring that with international cooperation.
I don't know anything about that accord. What is that?
The Minsk Accords were, so this again goes deep into fucking history. And you can't always say like, oh, I don't know the history, so I don't know. And then repeat like mainstream media propaganda,
Well, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know anything about it.
Ukraine as a nation state has even predated, or some form of like Ukraine has predated even the Russian nation state or the Russian Empire, I guess. And its nation state development project has always hinged on excising Russian influence. However, under the USSR, Ukraine, which was called the Ukraine originally, which just means like the border, okay, was seen as, had plenty of Russian sympathetic people that lived in the eastern regions. And that sympathy only grew the further east you went, the closer you got to current existing Russian territory. Now, that is no longer the case. Make no mistake. I'm not saying that at all. And that is no longer the case almost entirely due to Russia's actions in that area. Like blowing the shit out of Kharkiv is going to make sure, is the fastest way to make sure that there is no sympathies for your government ever again for the rest of your life. So that's all gone away. But originally the contention was LPR and DPR through Russian influence, and this is the Ukrainian assessment of the situation, these two areas wanted autonomy and were getting backed by the Russian government, and Western involvement that wanted to keep Ukraine in the sphere of the West did not want to give the actual protective assurances to Ukraine, but wanted to play the delicate balance of like saying, you know what, yeah, maybe we'll get you into NATO, with no real interest in getting them into NATO. Maybe we'll get you into the EU,
so how did
with no interest in getting them into the EU. What?
How did Ukraine violate their agreement?
There was mass shelling on both sides, like back and forth shelling.
War?
No. Back and forth shelling that has been happening since 2004.
Okay. So it was a non-aggressive
with 13
agreement?
or 14,000 people dying.
Okay, so I don't
in
about
totality.
That
so that is at the time there was a agreement called the Minsk Agreements. There were two versions of this, which neither side agreed upon, which meant that LPR and DPR would still remain under Ukraine, but would have autonomy. Okay. And Ukraine understandably did not want this because that would mean that Russia would have an outsized control on Ukrainian affairs and Ukrainian politics, which it already did through Russian loyalist leadership that they had that was obviously squashed because there's always been this back and forth between Western influence in Ukraine, wanting to move them into the Western sphere of influence, and Eastern influence, Russian influence in Ukraine, which wanted to maintain Ukraine's status and wanted to change Ukrainian affairs.
Okay, so they were both attacking each other, and you think the attacks were equally provocative? And again, I don't know anything about it.
I think that this was another instance of proxy war, 100%.
Okay.
Like there are people who wanted to be a part of Russia, and at the end of the day, though, like the reaction from the Ukrainian government to that was understandable. They wanted to protect their own interests. They wanted to protect their own borders. They wanted to protect their hegemony and national security interests. But there's a difference between like what they did in Crimea, for example, and what they did with LPR and DPR. What did they do in Crimea? There was a referendum. People say it was bullshit referendum. It was under gunpoint, which is understandable to say that because that is what happened in Crimea. But Russian territorial claims to Crimea Russian territorial claims that Crimea had more historical prescience and the highest level of support for Russian expansionist policies in Crimea specifically because of its military base that the Russian military operated out of. Okay, and what did Ukraine do in that situation? They cut the water supply. They immediately fucking broke a dam, a USSR era dam that was offering supply like water for the Crimean citizens that they said they, cared about.
You're talking about that recently?
No, that dam has been destroyed when Russia invaded Ukraine.
But essentially, I wanted to clarify.
They cut Crimea off, and not in the same way that they wanted to deal with LPR and DPR.
I wanted to clarify your position.
Yes.
Because it seems like there's a lot of confusion, so it's good to clarify. You do support...
This will not clarify my position. In the eyes of people who want to say that I'm like anti-Ukraine, people are still going to fucking yell at me.
But you said that you believe what America's doing in Ukraine is right.
I believe that Ukraine has a right to emancipation. What America should do in Ukraine is offer security commitments and assurances, and you can only get that by arriving at a table where you don't fucking destroy the bargaining chips, and instead allow the original security commitments to continue. I
don't know what you mean by that. You mean at the table
Ukrainian
with Russia?
envoys and Russian envoys got together in Antalya and put a 15-point security plan together as they were negotiating the terms of a ceasefire agreement.
And Russia, we need to get them, and I mean that it's not that easy, I would assume.
Well, there was moves that were being made to arrive at that.
Seems like Putin,
like a year ago,
he's kind of like a fascist leader.
Yes, Putin's interests are
to take the whole thing.
Putin's interests certainly are nationalistic. There's obviously material benefits to Ukraine because Ukraine would be a competitor to Russia as far as like oil and gas.
You think the Ukrainians should go to the table and make concessions to the Russians?
I think that Ukrainians went to the table and made concessions to the Russians originally. Yeah. And it was actually a very clever move by Zelensky to, like, for example, push the Crimean referendum 15 years down the line in order to not deliberate on that aspect right now, because Ukrainians want Crimea back as well. They want LPR and DPR to be Ukrainian. Mm-hmm. And Zelensky knew that was going to be an impossible thing to deal with, because he's right now, on the one hand, you have Ukrainians with interest in emancipation, ridding the Russian scourge from their borders, and taking back all of their territory from Russia, which includes Crimea as well. So he has a delicate balance where he has to make sure that those guys are not pissed off and overthrow him, and then or that America somehow gets involved and overthrows him, while simultaneously ending the war.
I'm assuming where people get mad at you is just the suggestion that Ukraine should make concessions to an aggressive fascist invader. Because, as we know, European fascist invaders, people often wonder,
they don't stop.
If we didn't make concessions to Hitler, would the war have happened? People wonder that.
Yeah, there's a difference of like there's a difference of talking pre-World War II and post-World War II because we do have mutually assured nuclear destruction.
I was about to say it's unfortunately the nukes change all the calculus with that.
So that's the difference there, and that's a very significant one because Article 5 dictates that like any kind of NATO nation that Russia tries to attack, okay, because NATO was developed against Russia, USSR, communism. It was an anti-communist institution in and of itself. Immediately means that all other nations, according to Article 5, are drawn into war with a nuclear superpower like Russia.
Right.
So there's a difference. Plus, one other aspect of this is that like Russia kind of showed its ass and its capabilities and where those capabilities end as far as ground war goes, which is the reason why you see Finland and Sweden, which previously had long-held neutrality, not like direct agreements, but long-held neutrality. I wouldn't say treaties because it's not an official treaty, but just like didn't join NATO
and
immediately joined NATO. Why? Because they realized they don't have any fucking power. What are they going to do? Go to Finland? Get the fuck out of here. They can't take over Ukraine. They said it was going to be a day. They suck. They don't have the power.
So also, I don't know the exact name of it, but I know Ukraine surrendered their nuclear weapons, which is one of the best things you can hope.
Worst things you could do. Never give up the nukes.
But like in terms of like a humanistic, a political move, it's bad. But like as a humanistic thing, that's
I mean, obviously we should get rid of nukes. Yeah.
Some say Ukraine had no way of utilizing those nukes because like the control mechanism was in the USSR, so in Moscow. But but you still shouldn't have given your nuclear stockpile.
So your point is that they should never have done that.
No. I think we'd be looking at a very different world if, for Ukrainians at least, if
with the benefit of hindsight. How could you say that? I mean, I don't think they would get invaded right now if they had nukes, right? I mean,
well,
if you have nukes, you don't get invaded. That's just kind of how it works.
Anyway, we made a guarantee to them that you give up your nukes and we'll got your back. And so I do feel like that's a pretty important agreement to uphold. I mean,
what?
You're talking about American promises to Ukraine in exchange for
surrendering their nukes.
Yeah, America never like actually followed through on any of their promises. America's still not following technically their promises of defending Ukraine. They're just giving Ukrainians weapons. Ukraine is currently sitting in a very unique position that I see happen in the same cycle of violence in the Middle East all the fucking time. America goes to a militant group and says, hey, we're going to give you weapons, you want autonomy, specifically Kurds, right?
You think every country should have a nuclear bomb?
I think every
citizen should have
this
one.
Current
Every citizen of America.
Yeah,
that's Tim Pool's.
I think
that's
in the
Tim
current
Pool's position.
formation, if you have a nation state, you have to have a fucking nuke. Otherwise, America will come and fuck you up.
So you think every nation should have a nuclear
I think
program?
either every nation has a nuke or none of them have it. And I would obviously want none of the nations to have it.
But less is
which is
better.
why I was in support of the Iranian denuclearization agreement. I thought that was good, which, Donald Trump fucked up.
Oops.
I believe an individual citizen in this country has a right to own.
You believe every person should have a nuclear bomb? That's the socialist vision
Yes,
of
I think
America.
everyone should have a nuclear bomb.
I mean, that's the only equality that we can really... Everyone should have a nuclear silo in their garage. So, okay. In short, you support Ukraine. What the Allied powers are doing to support them is right.
No. Because America's interest in Ukraine is not one that is genuine. America's interest in Ukraine is just fucking
I don't care about
withering.
the interest. I don't care about America's interest. I'm asking what you think.
Because, America's interest in Ukraine is incredibly important.
What do you think is the right thing to do in Ukraine?
I told you what I think the right thing to do is.
Then I asked to clarify, and you said no.
Instead of fucking up the deal that Ukraine had with Russia by, Boris Johnson fucking showing up in the middle of that, going to Kyiv directly.
Dude, do you think what's happening there is right? If not, why?
Do I think what's happening?
The Allied
You ask me a question, I answer it, and then you move on to something different.
No, because I asked you.
I'm telling you what I want.
The Allied powers is what they're doing there right. You said no, but I just got done having this whole conversation where you said yeah.
I think what the Allied powers are doing, as far as giving weapons to Ukraine with no end in sight, because they see it as a great way to fucking great way to continue the harm done to a weak Russia that they can simultaneously claim is really fucking powerful, is only going to continue this war rather than try to fucking implement security commitments and get to a unilateral agreement or a bilateral agreement where and not just fucking Russia and Ukraine, but bring China to the table and put an end, like do a ceasefire and put an end to this war is infinitely better for Ukraine and Ukrainian development, Ukrainian economy, Ukrainian citizens not fucking dying senselessly under a artillery shelling campaign that's literally happening. You know what's really fucking insane about this? Russia is getting artillery shells from North Korea, and America is giving America's telling South Korea to give artillery shells to Ukraine. It's fucking nuts. Both sides are just fucking shelling each other.
Shells.
But it's so stupid. Ukraine is now also using depleted uranium as well on its own fucking soil.
Okay, so
that is going to have damaging
position
implications.
Is that
that's going to have damaging?
Helping Ukraine is good, but that Ukraine needs to be more willing to make concessions to
not
Russia.
just Ukraine. Allies need to be more willing to some in certain instances even push Ukraine to make understandable concessions because
like
the
giving
idea
up land.
What?
Like giving up land.
Not giving up land. No, it's not giving up land. But pushing a referendum 15 years into the future for Crimea is a really solid middle of the ground approach that Zelensky's own team actually put forward, which I thought was great.
Do you think Zelensky's a provocateur?
No. What?
Oh shit! I have a doctor's appointment.
What the fuck? Wait.
Oh, I'm just asking because that's a position. I'm not saying that you ever said that. What?
You said it like I've said it.
No. I was just getting your opinion on it. Just because I've heard people say that, and I was just doing it. I was just checking your opinion on it.
No,
What time is it at, Lena?
It's at 2.
That's my last part, though. Basically.
No, I don't think Zelensky is a provocateur. What?
Like a bad faith actor.
No, I think Zelensky is certainly a self-interested politician who definitely wants emancipation.
Self-interest, literally, yeah, meaning his. Anyway.
Yeah, no, he wants Russia to no longer have control over Ukrainian territories, which is perfectly reasonable. He also has to strike a delicate balance because, as I correctly pointed out when the invasion first happened, whenever an irredentist or imperialist power makes a move on another nation, you embolden some of the most reactionary forces, and they are seen as liberators because in that moment, they are the liberators. The ones who have the violent means to push back are going to be seen as protectors. That only grows nationalistic, hyper-nationalistic sentiment, and that is never productive. That is never good. That's not good for workers' rights. That's not good for future prospects of Ukraine. And I think that blowback, who knows what's going to happen, but is terrifying.
I have to leave, bro.
All right.
But it's 1:30. I thank you for going so long. How long have we been going?
No, you know who needs to leave?
3 hours.
Vladimir Putin.
I agree.
Needs to leave.
That's
to leave
brave.
those people alone. Hey, Putin,
I'm going to
leave
say
those people
and
alone.
I know that's controversial, but he's got to leave.
This is probably our longest episode, and we did it not even mentioning a single current event.
We did mention that Rupert Murdoch died. That turned out to be misinformation that we were spreading. But
no, I said, is he dead?
Oh, okay. No. He's not dead.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
He's getting up there, 90 something.
I think this was a good conversation.
Yeah, it was good.
Was that good? Do you feel like I'm a fucking anti-America charlatan who's bad faith?
No,
who just doesn't...
no. I think your foreign policies, after talking them out, they're all like completely defensible and good positions. On the point of socialism, I can say like, well, I have a deeper understanding of it now. I do still believe that it seems more mystical and
no. You want
wishful.
Marx? You want Marxist, Leninist, Kleinist thought, which is socialism with capitalist characteristics.
Yes, and ultimately that is what I want. And ultimately, we agree almost entirely. And if you're mad about that, you're dumb.
Yeah.
You're
All right.
a dumb idiot.
I have to pee really bad.
If you're watching this and you're angry, you're a stupid.
Freaking got him, man.
Dumbass.
No, I thought that was good.
I think so too.
Unless you're Ukrainian, then you have they have a right at least.
Yeah, no, for sure. I understand.
Or Taiwanese. Or Tibetan.
I understand.
They have a right to be angry. I'm just saying.
I get
if you're an armchair warrior.
My tongue.
Like,
we're gonna get
NorCal and graduated.
I
from
can't wait for
Berkeley.
so many people from Virginia, Langley, writing about how they've been living in Taiwan for 25 years.
Right, like those. No, I thought that was a good faith conversation. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was good to and it was good for me to kind of explore what I think.
It's the classic like Donald Trump, my people yearn for freedom. Please glass Iran take that you hear from people living on American soil.
Thank you.
The only way to save Iran is by glassing it.
Thank you.
All right. I have to pee so bad.
That's what Ian said. Thanks, bro. See you next week. Bye, everybody. I got a pizza.